I'm just sending us to YouTube, so we should be up and running in less than 10 seconds here.
Okay.
Now streaming live on YouTube.
Yep, we are ready to go.
Go. Okay. The first thing I have on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, look at that.
All
Oh,
right.
we asked Commissioner Boatwright if he'd do that for us.
Sure. Everybody please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To
of the
the flag
United States
of
of
the
America
United
States of America.
and to the
and to
republic
the republic
for which it stands,
And
one nation,
one nation
God,
under God, with
indivisible,
liberty and
with
justice
liberty
for all.
and
Liberty and justice for all.
bro, 2. Sorry, have it. Sit down. Okay. Well, as you know, we're here to go through the general plan comments, try to put together what's out there and match it all up. We feel like we're about 90% there. So what I've asked is ask Dave if he would just kind of lead us through kind of a map discussion of each item, and between him and probably Kim are taking notes, Barry as well, I guess, and something to present to us for our August meeting. So we kind of thought we'd just take it map by map, start at the west and move east, and just eliminate it that way, if that works for everybody.
Well, let me share the screen here. We can start on the first map that we've got. Does everybody see the projected land use map there?
Yep.
So I guess I'll just kind of moderate the discussion here a little bit as we go through, since I'm hosting the meeting here. First, I want to express appreciation to all the work that the Planning Commission has put in, the City Council's put in a lot of work, and especially the community at large. There's been a lot of investment of time and energy into this general plan, and I think ultimately we're going to end up with a great product because of all of the efforts that are being put in. So the goal is to walk through map by map. I assume everybody has looked at the results of the survey. We've published those results, and the community, I'm sure, has looked at those as well that are interested in that. That can help inform the conversation a little bit. But the goal today is to go through each map, discuss based on the comments, based on your own feelings and research and all the things that go into your decision making, the changes or amendments that you'd like to see, because ultimately what the Planning Commission needs to do is get the maps and the narrative into a position where you are comfortable recommending that to the City Council by a majority vote. So we may not get to consensus. Maybe we will. We'll see as we go through this. But ultimately, we'll work through the maps, and then anything that changes in the maps, staff will take that from this meeting, and we will update the narrative to reflect any of those changes, and then bring back the general plan narrative and the updated maps in the next Planning Commission meeting, where there would be an action item to officially recommend the general plan to the City Council, who would then go through a process of public hearing and an action item for them, whether or not they would accept that recommendation or make any final amendments before an adoption. So that's the process moving forward, and Rob outlined it pretty well, that let's just start on one end and kind of work through it based on the survey results and everything else. So how about we start on the west end of town here, and then just work toward the east. So I know that there are some specific properties that have been discussed and comments made about it. But maybe let's stick with the area around Canyon Meadows Park and to the west. Are there specific adjustments or thoughts or amendments that you would like to make in that part of town?
Ian, there is none. Move on.
All right. Then let's talk about the middle part of town from 1900 East over. I think the biggest discussion point in the survey comments, as well as some of the other things that have happened, has been the area across from City Hall. Whether, let me zoom in a little bit here, if I can. Oh, I didn't like that. An error on the page. Let me reopen it. So while I'm pulling that map up, there's been discussion about that property just across the street from City Hall, whether that should remain commercial or that should revert to residential. The property owner themselves has requested, I know initially when we went through the first draft, they requested that it be a commercial property, it remained commercial. That has since changed hands. There's a new property owner who has requested that the property revert to R7. So
I
that,
think the big thing that I've seen and reading throughout the comments and everything is 64% of the people do not want the R7. And that parcel, the remaining parcel there, does not meet the acreage for R7. It has to be a minimum of 2 acres, and I think that parcel there was only 1.9 acres. So that should remain commercial.
I'd slightly disagree with that. I think we should change it to RM, residential moderate.
Yeah, I don't feel like it should be commercial, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's already zoned commercial, so if the owner chooses to, develop something commercially, they kind of have that option since it's been zoned commercial, but I wouldn't put that on a general plan that it should be proposed to be commercial. I think it should be some sort of residential.
I
But not
Okay.
R7.
No, not R7.
So historically, that has been a commercial area in the city. But I don't think in the future it should be. I agree it should be changed to a residential.
Are you talking, Gary, you talking the whole parcel or just the eastern half of that?
I just, the way that part of town is developed, it just really isn't designed for commercial anymore. But I'm open. Again, this is just a plan.
Yep.
We're not pouring concrete tonight, so.
And I need to ask, are we also including the city-owned property where City Hall is, or are we just talking about the Ray properties there? That
Oh, I don't want to see a spot zone for just the City Hall. I think all of it, whatever we decide to move it to. And that orange, yellow, sorry, colorblind, that surrounds it, that's R7, or excuse me, that's RM, right?
that's moderate density residential, would be zoned RM, yes.
I think that should show on the general plan as RM.
What about the 2 residential lots that are already there?
current zoning would not
What
be
about 'em, Russ?
affected by the general plan designation. It would just be future zoning.
Okay.
But the
So
current
oh, sorry.
homes would, I believe, fit in the RM zone.
Yeah, they would. I think there's actually 3 homes in there. There's one on the south side of South Weaver Drive and 2 on the
North side.
north side.
Yeah, one of those on the north side is fairly new too.
Yeah. But they would all fit within the RM zone.
So, and just to be clear, again, whatever we recommend in the plan doesn't mean it's going to automatically be rezoned that. Is that
No.
No, you're right.
Yeah, it's just a plan.
It's just a plan. Yeah, it doesn't change current zoning.
To be clear, the current zoning is a little bit different than this shows right now. Let me get back over to that spot if I can. Okay. The current zoning only shows this section right next to 1600 East on the north side of South Weber Drive, where the city hall is located. Only a portion of that is currently commercial. So this draft shows an additional area to be commercial than what is currently. So if we're talking about reverting all of that to RM, again, it doesn't change current zoning, but it would designate all of that area as RM. On the south side, the current zoning is that almost all of this that shows red on the projected land use map is currently zoned that, save a sliver on the eastern side and a back corner. So it's almost all currently zoned commercial. We would simply be designating the future zoning as RM to match the surrounding.
Yes.
I want to point out here something that I know Brad would point out if he were online with us. You're most likely going to get, if that's a moderate density residential zone, you're going to get houses that front on South Weber Drive, because there isn't any way, there isn't room there to build any roads interior to those properties and have lots off of them. So the only way they're going to develop as single family residents are going to be frontage on the existing streets you see there, either South Weber Drive, 1600 East or 1550 East.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it'd be appropriate to try and, have some sort of a promote, whether it be a turnaround on those individual homes or some way to.
Yeah, we
say
could
to
have
makes
a way to exit their property in a forward fashion, so they're not trying to back out into traffic.
Right,
Yeah,
and we've done that on the others that we've been doing recently along South Weber Drive.
Yeah.
Can we do a
Barry,
knuckle
can you
on there
recall-
too, Barry?
What was the question?
Can you do a knuckle on from South Weber Drive into those properties as well?
I just know I haven't looked at that specifically. I think it's doubtful, but there might be one or two places in there where you could get a knuckle.
Okay.
I don't know how UDOT would look at that, a knuckle on South Weber Drive. I think they might frown on that a bit.
So that was my question, Barry, is how many connections or how many driveways can we have within a given length of South Weaver Drive before UDOT starts raising some concerns?
Well, I don't know that there's a set number, but they're going to allow access because they can't just cut off access to properties, but that doesn't mean they have to allow a subdivision per se. So, if you're going to take that property on the south side of South Weaver Drive and carve it up to 5 or 6 lots there, maybe 8, I don't know what you'd get in there. I don't know if they'd allow that, because that would mean 5 or 6 or 8 driveways.
So is that something that we have to address now, or could we put
That's
a
my
note?
question as well.
Well, if
No.
we put a note in the narrative,
We don't have
saying
to
that-
address that now. I'm just pointing out, kind of some of the realities of the ability to develop that property as single family.
well, what I'm saying is, let's, what you're saying, let's put that in the narrative.
Okay.
Just saying, if this is changed to a residential zoning, then these are some of the issues that will have to be looked at if and when these properties are developed.
Yeah, I agree with you, Gary. And I think us establishing RMs at these as residential moderates establishes how we feel about where that should go.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, Gary. I
So
totally.
if I can ask the question though, because we alluded to it earlier, where we're talking about, Barry, if you're saying we're going to zone this at RM, at an RM level, is there some other density level that maybe we don't have to provide those single
No.
points of access?
Well, nothing that's really acceptable, I think, to the public, to the general public. I think the only other possibility for residential would be the R7 zone. And that's clearly not in favor in the community. So,
To the point that we don't have to plan the development in this meeting, we're just simply planning the density and the zoning. One thought in that regard, however, is access from 1550 East. There's a dirt road that used to be a road that is still there as a dirt road. To turn that into city standard would probably be a little difficult and require widening, but there may be an option there to access the property from 1550 East almost into a cul-de-sac that could access the other things and not require frontage onto South Weber for every single lot. But again, those are details of what a developer would have to bring forward in a specific proposal.
yeah,
Right.
All right.
yeah.
Very good.
But is that something we want to bring up on our transportation plan? Just put a pin there.
I don't know. We need to bring it in the transportation plan. I think we can just make a note in the text about, in the land use section of the text about being concerned about having too many driveways on to South Weaver Drive in that vicinity. And
Okay.
let the developer deal with it beyond that.
Is
So
there any- oh, sorry.
I am gathering there's kind of a consensus to move that to moderate density residential.
Does everyone go with that?
That would be only on the piece to the east there,
Well,
not where the store is located. Is that
all
right?
of it. All of
No,
it.
it would be
All of
all of it, is what I'm hearing.
Because I got a friend that's a realtor. He says there's somebody interested in the store. Commercial.
Well-
It's currently zoned commercial.
It's currently zoned commercial, and if they want to buy it and put something in there, they certainly can. We're not going to force anybody to rezone it to residential. So as long as it's stays commercial, they have the right to develop it as commercial.
As said, this is just a plan. It's not a rezone.
Okay. If that's consensus, let's move on. 1900 east of the mountain.
Yep. Okay, 1900 east of the mountain. Are there changes that you feel need to be made in this area of town?
David, I think the only thing that I would like to bring up is I'd like to see the development plan and agreement required so that crosshatch be applied to maybe the crossroads there, right? At, South Weaver Drive and the interchange of I-89.
So all of the commercial properties surrounding that, is that what you mean?
But yeah, so not to include the gravel pits. So pretty much everything on grade with South Weaver Drive. At
Okay,
least have the ability to have that development plan and agreement required for those parcels.
so the undeveloped parcel between the Maverick and the school, the
Yep.
area between 2700 East and 89, and then the area behind Maverick that's zoned commercial.
Yep.
All of that you'd
And
like,
on the north,
and the north side where there's
Yeah,
the park
and-
area.
correct.
And even you're saying along South Weber Drive, the frontage there on the north side.
I think these are our prime, some of our prime commercial areas, and I don't see why we wouldn't master plan these. Kind of the direction that we are going near Adams Avenue and 84 interchange.
Okay.
I don't
is
know
that
why
a-
we just limited ourselves.
So
Go ahead.
are you saying you want to have that little, the crosshatch or the little plus signs over the rest of that, the same thing over the rest of that property you just mentioned?
Correct.
Okay.
That
So
sounds good.
The one labeled on the plan as development plan and agreement required.
I don't want to do that. Sorry, Taylor. The reason why is
No, I'm all ears.
the crosshatch is specifically for those two parcels of property that the steering committee suggested, bring us something and let's take a look at it. I don't want to do that with the others because I don't want to get it confused.
Why not? I guess I'm not understanding the confusion, because I think what we're trying to create is a master plan development in the commercial areas of our city that can most likely drive a commercial development. And I don't know why we limit ourselves to just the Paul property there.
Well, because
I'm not sure if I'm seeing why we're creating confusion by expanding that.
I mean, I kind of agree with Taylor. I want to know if Barry, you see a problem with putting that crosshatch on those areas? Because it seems like it would give us even more control as to what is being proposed and enforcing that.
Yeah, it would give you more control. I'm not sure. I'm a little concerned about trying to do a master plan on those properties that are just on the north, right on the north side of South Weaver Drive, and adjacent to Maverick. Those,
I mean, it might,
it's like those are almost, it's almost too late there. We've got so much in there now that all they can really do is come in and put something that fronts on the road. I mean, UDOT has already restricted them to the number of accesses they can have on South Weaver Drive. So they have to plan it so that those, whatever goes in there, are using those limited accesses. I think that's
seems
maybe
like
a tough sell there, but I can see it. I can certainly see it on the two pieces that are kind of sandwiched between Frontage Road and Highway 89.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I guess just my thought is it would be a fairly simple development agreement. You
Well,
know,
it could. Yeah, it could be really simple.
so,
Isn't that
It-
where
So
we
I would be okay with that.
I'm not seeing a lot of negatives to requiring it.
we had that presentation the other night about the Jensen Salon, which would go in part of that, right about there, yeah, right in there. So, and I think if they follow the same process, you know, hey, this is what we'd like to do, come to the planning commission. We give it, you know, kind of, yeah, go forth and see what you come up with and leave it at that. I don't think we need to put the crosshatch in there.
But once they agree to a certain thing, we lock it in with
It's
a
locked in,
development.
right, right.
And then if they decide not to do that,
Then it's reverts.
yeah, exactly. So,
That's exactly where I'm going with that. So I get what you're saying, Barry, that it's the lots that are on the north side of South Weaver Drive and the one in between the Maverick and Charter School are more build-to-suit lots at this
Yeah.
point, just because of their size.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that. I think I like the idea better of having the crosshatch in between the frontage roads and Highway 89 on both sides of South Weaver Drive.
So in this cross-hatching, doesn't have anything to do with residential stuff.
No.
This is simply a development agreement that we would require that development plan and an
Right.
agreement. Is that correct?
Well, not necessarily. No, Barry, correct me if I'm wrong here, but what we're proposing with that crosshatch area is we're willing to talk, right?
Yes.
Because that's why we're entertaining some residential components of
Yeah.
the parcel down there at 475.
I think we probably, and if we're going to do that though, we probably should make it clear that we're not entertaining residential in those areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what brings the
crosshatch
confusion.
on the 2014 general plan did have the idea of mixed use. This is a different crosshatch with a different purpose. And
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
specifically saying development agreement and development plan. It's not addressing mixed use. It's
Okay,
not
I think-
saying we want a mixed use. It's not saying we're entertaining mixed use. It's only saying that we're requiring a development plan on the entire acreage, meaning we want it to be one cohesive development and one plan, even if there's some sense of phasing that happens for it to build out. It's all planned and organized as one cohesive development on the property. And then the development agreement is a tool that helps make that happen, is really all that we're requiring. But it's not talking about mixed use.
And
Yes,
I
that's
think
true. So
I think that's where some of the confusion has come from. People are kind of looking at both general plans, and there's been a change in the definition of what that means.
Yeah, yeah,
So-
very true. I could see how that'd be confusing, because we had crosshatches on all commercial property with that idea of, well, we're willing to talk about mixed use. There was not an entitlement there for a developer, but we're willing to have the conversation. And that's changed since 2014, where we're not interested so much in mixed use in residential on those properties. We're just interested in a larger development plan and organization of the property, so that when it develops, it's a nice cohesive project.
So I'm leaning towards Taylor. I think there's value in that. I don't know from a developer standpoint if that's just one more hurdle they have to run through, or if that's something that would, turn people away. But if we're looking for cohesion and that, I think there's some value there.
I do too. I've seen those kinds of properties develop without any kind of plan before, and it just becomes a hodgepodge of stuff thrown in there, and there's no real cohesion to it or look to it or anything. So I totally agree.
Yeah.
As I look back into how it's gone. Go ahead, David.
I was going to say the north side of South Weber Drive is a really good example of this type of a thing, where it shows up now as one long piece of property, but it's been subdivided to a lot at a time in order to develop. We're lucky that it's one property owner that still has a unified vision for that.
Right.
If we would have had this development plan, development agreement in place initially, that could have all been kind of planned as one unit going forward, not necessarily one building, but one plan. We've been lucky enough to essentially get that, because this one property owner has had that in mind the entire time. It's just been, in phases as he's been able to get commercial property, commercial businesses to bite on the property. But yeah, that's exactly what they would accomplish, as a unified vision. And what I'm hearing everybody say is, take what's on the Paul property with the crosshatch, add it to the two areas north and south of South Weber Drive, between the frontage road and 89.
Yep.
Are we in agreement on that? Everybody wants to see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, go with that. Is there anything else on this, Matt?
I just wanted to ask this question. I think I've asked it in the past, but over on this Cottonwood Lane, Cottonwood Drive, we just have a weird mix. We have the residential low density zone kind of just intermingled in there. I know it's just a carry on of what we have over there. I just kind of wondered, is there any other vision for this area? It feels like kind of a forgotten component of the city that we haven't talked a lot in the past. And I thought maybe I'll just bring it up.
I don't know if it's so much forgotten. I don't mean to speak for anybody else, but I don't know if it was so much forgotten as just a recognition that that property is essentially locked in place because of Cottonwood Drive where it is, and with the river and railroad tracks and 84, all of that right there. And so, I mean, there is potential if you wanted to allow it to be a higher density and put something like RM or RLM or something, but that's the lowest density that we have, and we've so far identified that as an area to stay that low density, to not allow it to subdivide into additional properties.
Okay, and that's basically what I was wondering. It just seemed like a big jump where, as you follow our land use map, there's a transition between similar or a slight difference in densities as you go between densities. That one is a big jump from RM to low density. So I'm glad at least we talked it.
if the planning commission wants to recommend that we allow those to subdivide and put a different density on there, you have that ability. I mean, you have that ability on any of these, colors and zones to change them if you feel it should be a higher density or lower density, anything like that. But
Let's
that,
leave it.
yeah, I think that area is so far removed and kind of cut off because of, or maybe that's not the right way to say it. It's isolated. And so there's not a true transition need from other zones like some of the other areas of town require, that it stands on its own.
Okay.
And the only other place that I'd like to bring up is another transition area, that residential very low density to transition light industrial over on the west side of the gravel pit, so running next to Highway 84. I mean, I guess my bigger question is that transitional light industrial area. That is the only area in the entire city that we have zoned or projected land use for that. I'm just wondering if it's really necessary to have that zone if we only have it in that one spot. But maybe that's more of a discussion for our land use ordinances.
Well, I think it's a good point, just because there's so much similarity between that transition zone and our light industrial zone that
Right.
we could easily call it a light industrial area as well.
So I'm not understanding what's the problem.
That's the only place that we have it. And it, like Barry is saying, it's very close. The regulated uses, not regulated uses, the uses within each zone are very similar. And so I'm kind of questioning the why we have that light industrial transitional light industrial in this area.
Well, let me just kind of give you a little history on that. The transition zone has been in the ordinance for a very long time, I think since probably the beginning of zoning in the city. And it was put there to be a transition from the gravel pits into the rest of town, to the other uses around there, so that there was something to kind of provide a visual screen and perhaps a wind block, and maybe even block some of the sand that comes out of there before it got to residential areas. And that was the intent. So that was essentially South Weaver's first industrial zone. And since then, a lot of things have happened, and we've changed a lot over the years and decided maybe there's some other areas that we want industrial uses to be allowed. And so we developed the light industrial zone. It's not a transition zone because it's not transitioning from anything in particular, but they wound up being very similar to each other.
I think it also should be
Barry,
stated
I guess
that area is currently zoned transitional light industrial. It is zoned currently exactly as it shows on the projected land use map as well.
Okay. So I guess I just bring it up as an oddity, but it would probably be something that I would like to see addressed as we start talking about our land use ordinances.
Well, one of the big things is Weber Basin Water Conservancy District owns that big block in there. And I don't think they're going to be wanting to go into any sort of light industrial in there. That's their water recharge area.
Correct.
I think that's true, Wes, but I'm not convinced that it will always be that.
It's also our SOB area.
That's true. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, that's a lot of the reason it's there. I just didn't know how to say it nicely.
We got to have one, so we'll put it there.
Now, just so that anyone that's watching on YouTube or doesn't know what that means, the SOB area, that means sexually oriented business. We have to allow them by statute somewhere in the city, and that's where we have chosen to allow them, as in that zone.
I think to Taylor's point, that's probably worth a conversation about whether or not we need a transitional light industrial or just simply a light industrial, that they kind of duplicate themselves in so many ways that we probably only need one of those. and we could put the, the SOB in whichever one we keep, but we probably don't need both, and we could just identify all of the area that we want industrial. The other area that we've identified as industrial is over here on the Cornea Drive over on the east end of town. There's also a section on the very, very far west end of town that you can see as well that is that also has that industrial designation. So
The only problem is with, you can't put an SOB over on that east side of that gravel pit simply because there's a school there.
Right.
Not Highmark, but the Job Corps.
Job Corps.
yeah, correct.
Well,
So
that
is
may
there-
be
is
reason
there a
in itself
desire
to
to-
have two zones.
Say that again, Barry. Sorry, I didn't.
That may be reason in itself to have two industrial zones.
Yeah,
We could certainly put it in as a conditional use, and then one of those conditions is outside that buffer between a school and a business. But I think it's a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
I agree. It is.
okay. Anything
Okay.
else on this map? We'll do kind of one final speak now or forever hold your peace on the projected land use map.
Seeing there is none, move to the next map.
Okay, so that gets us to the transportation map.
Oh, the easy one.
Let's let's talk first about the different option sections. I think those are the heavy areas as far as transportation goes, and then we can talk about any other areas. So let's first talk about the west side there, where there's quite a bit of undeveloped property right now. There were 3 options presented. 2A, 2B, 2C is what they were called in the survey. I again expect that you've already looked at those results, and they were kind of mixed results for A and B. There was a little bit lagging behind for C, but still fairly close. And then we did have some people that specifically said, because of the way the survey required an answer, they put an answer, but they did not care for any of the options. They would have liked to have said no opinion, or they didn't want any of the options. So those kind of both, the little nuance between no opinion and we just don't want roads in the area. But those were the different results. Are there preferences for A, B, or C in this area?
I think B is the one I would prefer.
I think that was the one
Can
that
you tell us
was,
why, Wes?
Well, you got a smooth transition, Old Fort Road all the way down through. You don't have a bunch of dog legs in there to get from one end to the other. The roundabouts, they could be relatively small and not be that much of a issue versus having T-junctions through there. So I think B would be the better option. And it's also the one that most of the people that did remark on it, that's the one that they preferred.
Dave,
Barry,
can you-
you're going to say something too.
Wes actually said it. I was just gonna say that wasn't by a huge margin, but that was the one that was most preferred on the survey.
I can't remember 2C. What can you flip to 2? Oh, there's 2C.
Yeah, 2C is kind of a combination of 2A and 2B. If you look at 2A, whoops, a little too far. 2A has Old Fort Road coming and turning south and going and connecting with South Weber Drive. And it has the original Old Fort Road coming and intersecting with it and continuing on. Whereas 2B has the roundabouts throughout, and then the connector road, the collector, would go up to South Weber Drive, but it would still, Old Fort Road would still be one long road, just having the roundabouts on it.
The one thing about the roundabouts, they will also be something to slow down any speeders in that area.
Well, that was the thought around the roundabout option, is that it would act as something that would slow people down for a little bit. Again, Brandon's not on here, but he would point out that there are certain devices in traffic that are traffic control devices for intersections, and those items used for slowing people down, and they're not typically the same. Intersections don't necessarily slow people down over the long run. And so he would point that out, but that was the thinking behind the roundabout option. And then it also allows Canyon Drive to continue through and intersect and have essentially those 3 roads going through that way. If you look at option C, it was a little bit of a hybrid, where a reminder of option A, it had Old Fort Road on the east side intersecting through and connecting all the way. Option B had Canyon Drive intersecting through and connecting all the way. This is a combination where the collector road turns south and connects with South Weber Drive, but it also has Canyon Drive going through all the way, and it has Old Fort Road from the east intersecting as a T and not going all the way through. So those are the 3 options as presented.
Okay. All those who like option A? All those who like option B? I like
Aye.
option B.
I like B.
I like it.
Okay.
The
Is there
Bs
any
have
wonder
it.
where Tim and I are at?
No, because there's already 3 votes for B.
Tim, how do you feel about this?
Yeah.
Sorry, no, your opinion, Matt. I apologize. I shouldn't have said that. I meant it in total jest.
B
So,
is.
David? David,
Yes.
can you tell
Yes.
me what, how to identify that property? What should I call it? So that we,
The option property you're asking about, Michelle?
yeah, like I'm trying to figure out how you guys want that identified in minutes. Like what's the location of that?
West Side puzzle piece.
Um,
I would say the area between Harvest Park subdivision to the west and the DR Horton subdivision to the east.
yeah,
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
And option 2B is the preferred.
Taylor,
I'd
is that
like-
how you feel?
no, I
Tim?
don't.
What were you thinking, Taylor?
I like C only because it provides limited access, and I'm not sure if I like Old Fort Road coming in as a straight connection at a roundabout. I think it would limit the amount of people that you would have coming through the neighborhoods east of. Yeah, sorry, Tim. Go ahead.
No, I agree what you're saying though. The option C gives a little bit more emphasis on, the limited access road connecting over to South Weber Drive and less emphasis on Old Fort Road. So, whereas the
Still
roundabout,
provides the connection.
yeah, provides a connection, but the roundabout I don't know what people would do at a roundabout if they'll.
They've got a roundabout that this could be similar to in Antelope Drive, just off of 89. There's a very small roundabout there with raised pedestrian crossings, and that controls the speed of traffic down through there fairly good.
Mhm.
I guess my only point would be that if you don't know exactly where you're going in a roundabout, you either keep going around or you make a mistake. And people that would be on Old Fort Road may not like mistaken travelers down their road unnecessarily. That was my thinking. I mean, there's still opportunities for us to plan roundabouts along this road if we want to encourage some kind of traffic calming. There's nothing to say that we can't. So I just kind of like the layout of 2C better.
We are putting limited access onto Old Fort Road, basically saying that you cannot build a house that gives direct access to Old Fort Road. The access will have to be internal of those lots to the roads that we're projecting there before they can get onto Old Fort Road or South Weaver Drive.
Well, only on the portion
David
that's
or
the
Barry,
frontage road.
do we have a name for the future collector road? I mean, it's kind of morphed, right? It's not
was
Old
gonna
Fort
bring
Road.
that up.
Old
That-
Fort Road.
Naming is a little bit of an issue there because the new section of Old Fort Road that was, just completed, we started out calling it Old Fort Road, and then we changed it to South Bench Drive, and now it's back to Old Fort Road, which makes sense if it connects into the existing Old Fort Road down there in the D.R. Horton subdivision development. But if we don't continue that through, there might be a little bit of confusion on the name of the road, and we might need to look at still another option for naming. I'm not saying that's a good reason. Just naming is a good reason to make those two have a direct connection. That's not, but it's a consideration in doing so.
Well, how would you write this in our general plan then? Do you call it Old Fort Road, or how are you going to make reference to it?
That's a good, we could call it the frontage road on I-84, I guess, at least for a section of it. I don't know how we'd refer to it exactly.
The
Well,
road
we have
formerly
another
known
photo.
as South Bench Drive.
Yeah.
We have another
Is there an
section
acronym
of
in there
town-
somewhere?
Yeah.
We have another section of town that actually has a very similar configuration with View Drive, where View Drive comes along and then turns south, and then there's a little T intersection, and View Drive continues again along the hillside rather than south. And it all is called View Drive. This would be a similar type of convention. It would all be known as Old Fort Road. The section going north and south would have to have a different name rather than the current Old Fort Road or the original Old Fort Road requiring a different name. But to Barry's point, the naming of it, I don't think determines what the right layout is.
As a person that lives ultimately by that View Drive T, I wish it wasn't like that because it's confusing for people when they come and find you or whatever.
Sure.
So I mean, you're right. It's not a reason why to pick a configuration, but it is confusing.
Sure.
No, I'm just thinking about the recommendation to the city council as Barry writes this. How is he going to write it? And so maybe that's a decision point that we do need to discuss tonight. But as far as the configuration, I'm liking C. Option
So
C.
the citizens have preferred option 2B by a majority, a slim majority, but they prefer that option over the others. I agree with them, the citizens, on that. Because if somebody's coming down Old Fort Road and all of a sudden it turns into 1000 East versus continuing as Old Fort Road, that could be very confusing. But if it continued all the way through as Old Fort Road, that would not be as confusing to a lot of people, I think.
I'd like to get a consensus so we can move on. Tim, I didn't hear from you yet.
Yeah, I'm still debating. Give me a second.
Okay, flip your coin. You got your lucky quarter. Come on.
Yeah.
Tim, what are your favorite donuts?
What's that?
Well, I say, what are your favorite donuts?
Say it may not matter though, because to be honest, I think I might lean towards 2C. It just seems like a better collector, the 2C. So
Gary, are you still on 2B?
I like to be.
Sorry, guys, I like 2B as well.
I like 2B.
Or not to be.
Okay, we'll put 2B on the map and then go from there.
Very good.
The other
Next.
section of town where we have the options of 2D and 2E. This received quite a bit of communication, quite a bit of feedback on the survey and conversation in the community over lots of different avenues. 2D is the continuation or the paving of the 1900 East extension to connect up the hill to Layton. 2E was leave it as is as a dirt access road with the infrastructure underground the way that it is. Just leave it as a non-connector. So 2D was connect, 2E was not connect, and I think that survey result was clear. 85% said no connection, 15% said pave it and make a connection. So what would you like to do in this area?
I'll jump in here.
I'm fine with
Unless you want
2E.
to.
2E seems, works for me.
I don't know if anybody yet had a chance to look at the geotechnical report for when they put the water tank up there. But that entire hillside is very unstable according to the geological geotech report. The geotech report shows 4 historical landslides that would go up along the connector to Layton. So I think we ought to keep it with 2E.
So being the newest of the group here to South Weaver, I've never really seen the need for it. But again, this is just a plan. But I never thought there would be a toll road built between here and Washington Terrace either. But there
Gary,
is.
when you say you've never seen the need for it, are you saying you've never seen the need for a connection to Layton City?
Yeah,
Okay.
just my personal, I live on the west end, and so most of my driving is towards Riverdale and Ogden ways. But it's clear that residents on the east end who would be the ones using this don't want it. I mean, that was pretty loud and clear.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, do
Well,
we
I mean,
need to have any
even as we're
discussion there, or are we all saying 2E on this?
so explain 2E as it's written, I guess, in the general plan right now.
The narrative right now speaks to the Layton connector. It has for the last few general plans. And so this is what we would have to update in the written portion in the narrative so that it would match the map. And we would,
What are we saying we're going to write there
I think we would explain
with the
that
2E option?
I think we just say it stays as is and there would be no future Layton connection there.
So is it worth even putting in a Layton City future road on our map?
Probably not necessary.
this is one of those things where you're right. If we're not going to include it in the plan, why do we even mention it at all? But because it was on a previous plan and there's been so much conversation about it, it may be wise simply to document the community conversation that we have had discussion about it. We have looked at it and we chose not to include it on the plan. There may be value in that, but typically I agree with you, Taylor, that if it's not on the plan, why use space to describe something that's not on the plan?
David,
Right.
I agree.
I think for future discussion, as part of what Dave said, we ought to kind of put a note in there to go along with what Dave said, that 85% of the people, the citizens of the city, rejected the connector to Layton.
That's
that-
not a correct
So,
statement. That's not a correct statement.
Well-
85% of the citizens didn't participate, or 100% of the citizens didn't participate in the survey, and 85% voted against it. It was 500%, 500 citizens of the community. But I sit along with what Dave's saying. Just why it's there as it is, and just move on.
So I've been really split on this. So I just want to make one point clear. And I guess we made mention to it in our discussion about the 1900 East frequently asked questions. And I mean, if we're going to put it on our general plan, it will be a discussion point for future planning commissions and city councils. What I don't like is the idea that if we leave it some kind of language about a connection into Layton in the general plan, that it incorporates a conversation about that road exiting out onto Church Street, or where Layton Family Clinic is. And I've driven this. I've looked at it a bunch of different directions. I work on base. I live not too far from 1900 East, and as I thought about it, I don't see myself using it because there are faster options. There's 89, 193 onto base. Eastgate and Eastgate development are not drivers for traffic. So I guess I'm kind of wondering if we can draft something that says, in the event of an emergency, that we're going to utilize this road to exit. I would like to see something that says the connection coming into Layton would exit. Well, I'm going to forget the street name now, but right street from where the Dairy Queen and Taco Bell are. That is a right-hand turn only. You cannot turn left off of that. And it would be a very limited neighborhood connection if it were to ever be considered in the future for emergency egress.
So
I don't know if we have the ability, if what I understand, Taylor, what you're saying is that we write something in there that it remains as a dirt road. We're not planning to pave it. We're not planning to connect it to Layton, but it is a road that exists currently in its current condition. And in this case of emergency, if we needed to use that for exiting the city, again, in case of an emergency, that you could utilize that. But I think that we're not going to be able to dictate where traffic goes once it gets to the top of the hill and it tees into whatever development Layton does.
What I think we can, though, is we have a conversation about a regional transportation plan. Not that this is a regional connection, but more to say that if we're going to maintain a notional idea of a connection, that at least it's a neighborhood to neighborhood connection, not a neighborhood to commercial development.
I don't know.
And I think it's doable.
I don't even know if anybody wants to support even that neighborhood and neighborhood connection. I think, it is an existing dirt road. It provides access to a city facility. But I agree with David. I think we should have something in the narrative that may provide some information for future planning commissions, future city councils about, this used to be on the general plan for so many years. It's not now, and this is the reason why. But that's just my thought.
So I guess I don't want to misrepresent it that I'm in favor of paving and having the connection, right? I'm just, if it's going to remain on the general plan, we need to have a narrative like we're discussing. But I'd rather have that narrative explain that if in the event of emergency, we wanted to utilize this road, which is something that it was mentioned in the survey results by a lot of folks as well, that we work with the city of Layton so that this is not a connection into Eastgate development, if that ever happens. Rather, we'd like to harbor a conversation with Layton City and have something included in their master plan where this is a neighborhood to neighborhood connection and that we connect further west than Church Street connection, as we've identified in previous general plans.
Yeah, I don't know if I like that.
I'm not sure
No.
that we can dictate. That kind of almost sounds like we're trying to dictate to Layton what they do with their road plan there.
So I'm not trying to dictate it to Layton. I'm talking more about the regional transportation map,
Yeah,
right?
Well, the
That we
regional
have the
transportation-
opportunity to talk regionally.
You know, the regional transportation map had South Bench Drive on it, and that's been shot down.
It also has this connection on 1900 East.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is that we have to address it on our general plan to say that, and this is my proposal, that instead of having a notional connection in any of these plans, if there's a preference here,
Taylor, are
the
you
preference
saying
would
we
be
should
a
go back
neighborhood
and
to
put South Bench Drive into our general plan also because the regional council wants it? I don't agree with that.
no, and that's, I guess you need to look at the new 2050 regional transportation.
I
map,
looked at it.
because, and right now it's the one that's coming up 1900. And so I'm just trying to say that I think to David's point earlier, I forget when he made it, but to have it on the plan is good because it allows us a certain level of control to plan. And I would just like that narrative expanded to say that, you know, we're having this map, or sorry, this road on the map. It is a dirt road. We will maintain it as such. But in the event that there is any future connections, in the event of emergencies, we don't want it coming down onto Church Street.
We can't dictate to Layton where we want that road to come out.
Yeah, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we have a partnership, or we have a conversation with them to say, because if you've driven it, I'm not sure how many of us have. There's a very simple connection that can be made with a neighborhood to neighborhood connection. And we've internally discussed that there is a connection that can be made to Church Street. What I'm suggesting is that we look further west for that connection in the event that, you know, that the emergency happens and that's our preferred route of egress.
I think I would wait until there's an emergency for that conversation, or
And then
wait
it's too late,
until,
wouldn't it be?
Well, I don't,
or wait till Layton City develops even a portion of something up there. But right now, we're
So-
saying we don't want it.
Right,
To
and I'm
leave it
not
as
saying that
is.
we don't want it. I'm saying we leave it as is, but I'm just saying that I think it would be value added to say in the narrative of the general plan, that the connection that if it ever is to happen in whatever form, we don't want Layton City to connect that road to a commercial or collector road.
I don't think we can dictate to Layton City what they're going to do up there.
and I think what we're saying is we don't want a connection.
Yeah, 85% of the respondents to the survey said no.
No, and I get that. You're not hearing me, and I guess my frustration is getting to a point where it's not maybe worth the argument. So
Taylor,
if you,
Taylor, if I can
Go ahead. Yeah.
maybe tell you what I heard you say and tell me if this is correct or not. What I heard you say is on the map, show it as a dirt road, as is. We're not changing anything. In the narrative, when we explain that it used to be on the plan as a connection, we now reverted it back to leaving it as is, but we want to acknowledge that even as a dirt access road as is, it could be used in case of emergency. And we would like, when that happens, or if that happens, that it is used in case of emergency, that people connect into residential areas instead of onto a main street in Layton. Is that what you're saying?
correct. Yeah, and I'm not sure, have we ever had the conversation with Layton to say, you know, we understand the Eastgate development is going to happen somewhere in here, but man, when I drive up there, there is an established connection that can take you into an established, into a neighborhood rather than going to Layton Clinic and that
Okay.
connection.
Well, I get what
and I
you're
guess-
saying. Let me say two things. One, there have been conversations with Layton between South Weber City and Layton City about a connection point, and a potential connection. That's how it ended up, a little bit of where it is. Of course, it was an access road to the tank, but it did end up at a connection point that was already discussed with Layton City. But the second thing I would say is, in the case of emergency, I wouldn't think we want our residents to drive into a neighborhood. I think we would want them to not drive through a neighborhood if they were exiting out of the city.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so bear with me because I feel like I have been so on the fence on this issue. And I'll tell you right now that most of my neighbors live on 1900 East and they do not like this connection. I don't like the fact that it comes on 1900 East. I don't. I think that destroys the integrity of the neighborhood. However, as a planner, as somebody who knows transportation planning, it bugs me that we're not considering this connection. I know we've been roundabout on different ways to make this connection. And I'm willing to concede the point that maybe it's not a neighborhood to neighborhood connection, but I'm really having a tough time not at least conceptualizing this on a general plan, that we're going to leave it completely off and done, and there won't be any connection in the future, because I do feel like it serves a purpose. It's just, I do not like the 1900 connection. So again, I feel like I might be regurgitating a whole slew of different thoughts and feelings on this topic because I'm really conflicted on it. But
I don't
know if
think,
anybody else is feeling that.
well, Taylor, I don't think just because we don't say those things that you're suggesting that it negates, a future council or commission or future general plan from discussing it at all.
I'm wondering.
Correct.
So, sorry.
I think that
Go
can
ahead.
always be discussed in the future. And if, a future council or general plan decides to go the rounds again, and which doesn't bother me at all, and to talk to the citizens and discuss whether it's something that's wanted again. I think right now we're deciding that it's not. But I don't think it negates just because we leave off language that it can never be discussed again at all.
I'm wondering if I may, had it been discussed by earlier planning commissions and councils 25 years ago, that maybe this kind of a connection wouldn't have headed at 1900 East. It would have been somewhere else and but it would planned better. And so I'm wondering if we're saying we forget it and just it's a dirt road and that's clearly what it is, that we are putting councils and planning commissions 25 years down the road into even a more difficult spot because of the development that's taking place instead of really planning it. But that's all. I'm just wondering. I'm with Taylor. It's like, as a planner, are we planning or what are we doing here?
Well, I agree with you. I just don't. I think we've kind of gone the rounds of trying to find alternates that work, and I am baffled as to find an alternate that works.
I can't find one either. You're right.
So I don't know why it would be any worse 20 to 25 years from now. What would we plan now to be better? I don't know. So
I'm going to put this out there, and I'm sure I'm going to get a whole ton of hate mail on this. So I've read
the club.
Every single comment. Yeah, I've read every single comment that has been submitted on this topic, and consistently, it's traffic, it is crime, it is. Oh gosh, I'm going to forget some of these, and I apologize if I do. But I think what I'm trying to say is that we don't know what we don't know. That
I totally agree.
We're proposing a line on a map that is going to be studied in the future. Is there potential that we can negate those concerns that have been raised by our citizens in a road that makes them happy? Potentially. I think we haven't talked about the width of this road. We haven't talked about traffic calming. We haven't talked about interchange. We haven't talked about its connection, right? And I guess I apologize. I feel like this is just a huge regurgitation of a lot of different thoughts. But if this was a connection that was neighborhood to neighborhood instead of a connection that was neighborhood to commercial. Is that something that's been presented to the citizens that might be considered? I just feel like there's a lot of misinformation that I've seen, and not a more robust conversation about what this road could be versus what is being portrayed as a highway. And we know this will, I would never approve a highway here. But would it work as a neighborhood to neighborhood connection? Maybe. And I know it's never been discussed.
The
So,
traffic study that was done on kind of looking at 1900 indicated that from Hill Air Force Base main gate and from Layton, this road would not increase or decrease the amount of time for people to get to South Weber. If they went down 193 and 89 to get to South Weber, there would be a minimal reduction in time. And that the traffic study basically said, don't even consider it.
Which traffic
And I
study you
totally
talking
agree.
about?
Traffic study that was sent out, that was emailed to all of us about 3 weeks ago.
Is it the A-Trans traffic study?
I'm not sure.
Yes, yes, it is. The traffic study that was done, I believe, in 2010, something like that.
Yeah.
Taylor, what I hear you trying to do here is kind of create a win-win, right? To use Stephen Covey's
Right.
term, that there are things that the community wants. There are things that a good planned out city has, and you're trying to marry those and say, can we accomplish both of those goals and keep it as is, plan for it to be as is, but acknowledge that the crystal ball is fuzzy and there may be a future need in that area.
Correct.
And can we leave that door open? That's what I hear you saying.
Right.
And I think, again, the map is going to show it as a dirt road. What we're planning is it to be a dirt road. We're not planning to pave it. We're not planning to, construct anything there. We're planning to leave it as is, as a dirt road. So I know sometimes the conversation is, well, if we plan to pave it, then that's a plan. But if we plan to leave it, then that's just not a plan at all. Well, I don't agree with that entirely. I do believe that we are planning to leave it as is. But to Tim's point, we have to acknowledge, and I don't know if we have to acknowledge it in the narrative or if you would like to and the others agree with you, but I think there's concern. Gary, I think, alluded to it, that the concern is by acknowledging that a future council may think differently in their day than we think in our day, it presents it as we're leaving the door open to connecting it. And I think the message is we don't want to leave that door open so much. We want to plan for it to be a dirt road. That's what the community is asking. But even by not saying anything, yes, there is a future potential there that we can't walk away from, that at some point there may be, community pressure, the same way that community pressure and public opinion and political will is directing things now. That may shift, that may change at some point in the future. And that's what I hear you acknowledging, that not just emergency, or maybe it is just emergency, but even if it's emergency only, where would we want that emergency traffic to go? And would it be better to have that be neighborhood to neighborhood? In the event of emergency, I would see that wanting to go on to more of a collector style road in Layton so that we aren't infringing on neighborhoods. But if it was used more frequently, I see how what you're saying, it being neighborhood to neighborhood, would limit the type of traffic and the type of use. So the way I hear you speaking is kind of three different future options that we again, it's all nebulous and it's all in the crystal ball that for me is always hazy, and I don't know about that. But one option is just leave it as is, don't really say much about it. The other is leave it as is, acknowledge that it would be emergency use only. The third option is leave it as is, but acknowledge that at some future date, if and that's a major, major if the political desires of the community were to connect for some reason, that we would want that to connect in a way that limits the amount of use, that protects our community. That's what I hear you saying. That if for some reason that door number 3 does get opened and unlocked by somebody in the future, can we present that in a way that we're still protecting the interests of the community as they've described it today?
Correct. And I do feel like, and I apologize, I'm scatterbrained on this issue, but if you drive that road, that neighborhood to neighborhood connection concept, it is not a lot of driveways fronting that road. And it's, my thinking in an event of emergency, you come up to that intersection of Church Street and 193, you have an intersection, you have a light, a signalized light. If you kind of take that more neighborhood route to the west, it is a mandatory right turn. So there's no option. You're going to be flowing traffic right onto 193 without any issue. You won't have people, waiting to turn left and pulling all those people into a long queuing line. So, David, I appreciate you articulating it that way, because I do feel like if we don't have it on the plan, it's a punt, like to Rob's point, and we might be doing a disservice in the future. So I don't know where that leaves us. Again, I want to reiterate, I don't like the connection at 1900 unless we can plan it to a point where it is a similar street to what's existing on 1900, that we can ensure that there's limited traffic demand and it can be done safely. And that is what I think the general plan and our land use ordinances need to address, is a safe and efficient future use. That, in the event, like you say, the stars align, everybody's in favor of this, something can be discussed reasonably and planned for. I totally acknowledge, and I don't want it to be misconstrued, that I'm listening to what is being said on the comments of the survey. I understand that those who responded predominantly don't want this connection, and that's why I'm willing to leave it on the general plan as a dirt road. But I'm really concerned about just not planning for future use.
I want to ask a question, Taylor. If we do that, how do you envision that affecting planning, say on the Layton side of things? How would this change anything?
So yeah, I think we need to have the conversation with Layton. I mean, the Eastgate RDA, I think I need to double check this, and maybe it might be a good idea to mention on a public meeting, but it's been going out there for a long time. It is not a spring chicken, and nobody's nibbled on that. A lot of that has to do with the connections into the base at this point. It's really difficult. It's political. There's a lot of bureaucracy with that, and I don't see a huge draw at this point for an Eastgate development. So, can we have a conversation with Layton to say, where can we make a reasonable connection to South Weaver and Layton that's a neighborhood to neighborhood connection that doesn't impact any future Eastgate development? Or, where can we reasonably expect? I don't know, an Eastgate development proposal. When is that coming? I don't know, but
I think that's a discussion.
I've heard a lot of
time.
Is it? I don't know.
I
feel like now's the time.
I don't think so, Wes. I think Taylor's talking right on. If I may, I mean,
we're talking about the general plan. We're not talking about the Eastgate development. We're talking about the general plan here.
Correct. But what you hear in the public sentiment is that, and the comments, is they're concerned about that Eastgate development funneling traffic through 1900 East. And I think we want to maybe address that within the language of our master plan, somehow, some way. I don't know exactly how, but I guess a connection to the Eastgate development doesn't need to occur on any proposed road if it's a neighborhood to neighborhood connection. the way I've driven this, the way I'm seeing it through Layton's land use ordinances and everything else. And I'm just proposing this now. I know, and what I'm saying here is this is not a decision on building the road. This is a decision on, do we want to plan this further within our general plan? And I think it is the time to say, is there any other options that we want to consider? And I haven't heard a lot of conversation about this yet.
So what I hear, Taylor, and I think maybe it's as simple as one or two sentences in the narrative, is that we are planning for this to remain a dirt access road. If a future planning commission and city council and community at large feels the need to change that, we are concerned about the road connecting into a larger collector. And we would hope that if there was a future decision to change the general plan and connect the road, connect the road, we would hope that they would maintain that, or that road would connect into a neighborhood road instead of a collector road. Something as simple as that. We're just trying to project, these are the concerns. These are why we took it
Right.
off the general plan. If somebody else feels the need to reverse that decision for whatever reason, please consider the things that we are considering now and we are concerned about. That's what I hear you saying.
Yep, that's exactly right. Exactly right.
Does the rest of the commission want us to include that type of language in the narrative?
I don't.
I
I
don't.
don't.
Okay, I heard 3 say no. Taylor, yes, and Rob didn't speak, so he's processing.
I don't think that you can tell a future planning commission, a future city council what they can and can't do with that road.
True.
I think we do that with the general plan 100%. It is how we want the city to develop. And new
5
city
years.
councilmen and planning commissioners come on all the time.
Right.
So I think we leave it undone. Leaving it undone might cause more harm than if we leave it off or not address it now
I
in some
think
form of text.
I think it's okay in some form of text explaining what Dave says, because that's fair. Here's how we feel about it, but it is up to you, future planning commission, future city council, to do what you will with it, because it was on the general plan at one time. Now it's not. And this is why it's not, because we really would like to see it do this, whatever. However, Dave explained that, and it's up to you to put it in the future if you like.
See,
Heck, it's in our ballpark if we want to do it today. If something changed.
I think the hard part is, and I'm just trying to speak for myself, if I was a future city manager or city planner or commissioner or city council member, and I saw a general plan that said, we don't want this, but if you do want it, you're almost acknowledging door number 3.
Yeah.
And I think the goal right now in the plan is to say we don't want door number 3. That's the difficulty, I think, Taylor, is by acknowledging it.
David,
There's legitimate reasons to acknowledge it. I understand that. And I get the danger from a planning perspective of saying we're not going to acknowledge that future could change. But again,
Right.
that's on them. And all we need to do is explain why we're concerned now and state that in a way of, these are the reasons we took it off the general plan, is because we're concerned about these things. Therefore, we removed it. And if somebody else looks at that in the future and says, well, we would like to put it back on, they would have to acknowledge our concerns because we're stating our concerns.
Yeah,
I just don't want to
discuss
lose
that
the
also.
opportunity to plan.
I'm not losing an opportunity to plan. You're putting that
Yeah.
planning
Sure we are.
opportunity on the future planning commission, not us.
Yeah, but Wes, I mean, surely you acknowledge that stating what what Taylor's saying is there's some wisdom in that, right?
Here, can I say it this way? Because I've had similar thoughts to Taylor. I understand what he's saying as far as future planning, because I've already said that my crystal ball is fuzzy. But as I look into the future of the community, I could foresee a day where the community public desire says we do want a connection to Layton. Let's follow that train of thought for just a little bit and say the public in the future says we want a connection. Right now they're saying heck no with lots of other symbols and numbers, but that's fine, right? Right now it's no, we don't want it. Just like 10 years ago they said we want it, and we're saying no, we don't, Ron. There is a change there. If that change were to happen in the future, this is what I foresee. What we're trying to do, and some of the reasons I believe the connection to Layton was discussed and put on the general plan previously, was again with the future in mind of a day at some point, not in the next 2 years or 5 years or whatnot, but some future day, acknowledging that this area is built out and there may be a need. If in that day we would love to have collected impact fees, we would love to have planned ways to pay for that, to lessen the burden on the current residents of the city. But the political will right now says we're not interested in that. What that means is at some future day, if the political will changes, then they won't have the same resources at their disposal, because we wouldn't have planned for it and had financial things that we would have put in place to collect money for it, etc. But if it really truly becomes that need that you described, Taylor, then the city will just have to figure out a way at that point. It may cost more, it may be more expensive and more difficult to do, but the need will dictate it at that point. Obviously, as a planner, you want to limit the number of times a future council looks back and says, man, I wish they would have 20 years ago. We've
Right.
even used that phrase tonight, that, man, if they would have done this previously, we'd be in a better situation. We're all trying to make those types of decisions and limit the amount of times the future leadership looks back and says, man, I wish they would have, right? That's good planning. But at the same time, I think right now it's clear that the desire is to not have that connection. The hope is to not have it ever happen. But if it were to be needed, at that point, they would have to use the resources at their disposal, and we wouldn't necessarily have the financial tools that we do now. But that's just the reality they would have to live with, again, if it becomes a need. If it doesn't ever become a need, then that's not a problem. We didn't plan for the need. But if it does become a need, we wouldn't have planned for that need, and they would just have to deal with it in the future. And again, it would be a frustrating thing for them. And we're not trying to kick the can down the road. We're simply trying to plan for today, recognizing that there's a potential here for a future need, but we're trying to say we don't want that right now, if that makes sense.
I mean, I agree with you, David. I think the only thing that I would like to add to that would be a conversation about what we might envision a road looking like. And I don't know quite how we do that in the context of saying that we want to maintain it as is. But I mean, I would love it to be stated that a proposed road or a proposed connection wouldn't unnecessarily degrade the neighborhood feel of 1900 East. That we maintain maybe a certain road width to reduce speeds on that road, or that we employ some kind of traffic calming devices to discourage people to be passing through, whether that be speed tables on 1900, something, so that we maintain the integrity of that neighborhood as a quiet residential neighborhood. And only in the event that we can maintain that a road be considered. Because the road exists now, and Rob has made mention of that in other meetings. It's there. The connection's there. And I think we'd be short-sighted in at least not addressing how we want that connection to potentially look in the event that somebody considers it in the future. And I think we take the comments that have been given to us in the in the survey, and we address things like speeding, cutting through, making it so that we're not having a lot of through traffic is key and elemental to any approval of that road.
But if you
Again, I'd
build
like
a
to
road,
reiterate.
if you build a road, they're
Go
going to
ahead.
use it. You can't say we're going to build
No,
this
absolutely.
road and expect people not to use it. Honestly, I think we're spending way too much time on this. The discussion that's happening tonight should have happened last year. And
Well, it's been evolving for a very long time.
well, we need to move on. This general plan has already
And I get-
taken way too long. And I respect what you're saying as a planner, but as a historian, let's just document why it's no longer on the plan. And then if the future planning commission or city council wants to address it, then they can do that. I don't see, it is going to open up a huge can of worms. The public has spent a ton of time giving us feedback that we've asked for. And let's listen to them. If this is a mistake, I'm fine with that. I can live with that. I'm
And I
not
think
gonna
that's
be
exactly what
around
I'm trying to
deal with
say is
it.
I'm listening to them.
So
I want to say that I am listening to them. Go ahead.
Agreed, but I think rather than listing the ways a road could work, I think we just list the reasons it won't and the reason we're not doing it.
I agree with that.
I don't think you should do that either. Let's just say it's 2E, it's a dirt road, it sits there. End of discussion, end of comment. We're done.
Yeah,
That's
I'm fine with that.
I don't want any narrative or anything. The
I can
road
live with that.
exists.
Okay, so if
dirt
that's the
road,
case, then let's
that's
just take
it.
it all off.
Well, and I'm
So let's
okay with
just take
that
it all
too.
off. Because I was perfectly fine with that too. It's either an all or nothing option for me, and I guess that's why I've been so
But
all
the
over the
fact is,
place on this.
you can't take it off as a dirt road because it does exist. Okay, and it is our access to our reservoir. So, and that's all we're
But
doing.
I get that, but we're not projecting any future use of it beyond just a dirt road. So why even have it on there?
This 5 people in the plan commission,
Right.
correct, and the 5 in the councilman in the city council, yeah. But again, in 5 years, 2 years, 25 years, I have no idea. That may change.
I got an idea. It may be a horrible idea, but instead of putting any information in the narrative transportation section, what if we put information in the emergency section about an egress, saying that you could use the dirt access road to the water tank as an egress in case of emergency?
So I don't think we need to tell people that, because if there's a
Yeah.
fire, people are going to use whatever they can.
Right.
But I mean, if it does go anywhere, then, put it in the emergency plan. But I'm fine with pulling everything about this road out of the general plan. I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
Do we
Yeah,
want
I
to-
agree with Gary. It would be better in the emergency management plan anywhere else. But no, if we're going to completely disassociate this road from the general plan and not plan for any future use, then we should strike any record of it.
Well, you
just
can't
lose
strike
that
the
time.
record of a road that exists. That's the problem.
Sure
It's
we
there.
do.
You got to deal
We
with
do.
it. You got to deal with it. The city
No,
owns
but we do it
60
all the
feet right
time.
away, but the city already owns the right of way. The city already owns it exists. We have to deal with it because it exists. Now, I'm okay with dealing with it as it exists, as a dirt road, the way it sits, done. But I don't want to take it off the map.
No,
But I'm not suggesting taking it off the map. I'm suggesting that we never identify in the general plan, because look at all the other residential streets that are only there in name only, and they do not have any color coding legend to the general plan. That if we're going to completely disassociate it, then why even highlight it on a map?
I think the reason you would highlight it as brown, showing that it's an existing access road, is because there has been so much conversation about it. And again, the historian side of me, as Gary brought out, is to acknowledge that there has been enough dialogue and plenty of conversation. But what I hear you suggesting, Taylor, is if you put the brown on the, option 2E and you show that brown, then you have to explain why it's brown. But if you just remove the brown
Right.
and leave it as white, then
Yep.
you're suggesting there's no need for explanation.
Correct. It's a pre-existing road. We know it's there. We're not going to reject any future use of it. Done.
I support that.
If we're,
Well,
Okay.
can I point out that the other roads that we don't designate with any color are public roads. They're open to everybody.
Yep.
This one is not.
Isn't that
well, I
a-
think it's pretty clear by the fence in front of it that
So-
it's not a public road. I mean, we have others that are like that, right?
Yeah, I don't think you need to
You wouldn't-
highlight access roads to other city facilities necessarily, or other private roads and things like that.
But
You just
you
leave
can
it
just
off.
label it an access road. And that, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's an access road.
Okay,
I mean, it doesn't have a street name or anything, right? That we know
So-
of.
No,
so I think we've come to the point where,
I want to just,
oh, sorry, Barry.
no, I just want to make sure I'm clear. I'm hearing that we want to just identify it as an access road, no color, no comments in the text about it whatsoever. It's just gone.
Here's
Is
the
that
problem I have with
if the-
that, Barry, is we've had it on there as an access road in previous general plans. And if you were looking at it, you're like, why did this disappear? What's the deal? The road's still there. Why did this disappear? It needs an explanation.
Okay, I'm good with that, but I'm not sure that's a consensus.
I mean, I'm fine with an explanation because I like the history and explaining the history of, but I don't know that we need to highlight the road.
I mean, if we're talking about colors on a map, I don't give a crap either. I really don't. But I
We
think the road needs
we
an
make it
explanation
purple?
of the history of what it is and what it was.
Then let's leave the map on the road, or on the, sorry, the map on the road. It's been a long. The road
Leave
on
the road on the map.
road on the map, take the color off. It will be just like any other existing road, like the road I live on that has no special color in the general plan. Put a short paragraph about why it was taken off and leave it at that.
Is
That's
the
what I like.
road gated at the bottom?
It is.
Yeah.
Let's put a gate on there. Let's indicate that there's a
It-
gate.
It is
It's
gated.
gated. It's locked.
Well, let's indicate on the map that it is locked and take and put city utility access road, print that along the edge of the road itself and leave it at that.
Right.
So as for the general plan, we will remove the color. We will indicate that it's a dirt access road on the map. But then we will only have a short narrative, maybe a paragraph explaining that it previously was on a general plan as a connector. It is no longer on the general plan as a connector. Just simply acknowledging that change.
Sounds good.
Okay.
That works.
Okay, let's go back to the larger map then. And again, let's start on the west. Whoops, I went too far.
David, can you hear me?
Yes, we lost you for a second, Taylor, but you're back.
Yeah. Yeah, the call dropped, but I don't have video yet. But
Okay, so we're just
Sorry
looking at
about
the west side of town. Everything west of what we've been discussing or what we did discuss on the Watts Peak property there, where we talked about options 2A, 2B, 2C. Let's look at the west end of town there. Anything that you'd like to see differently on that part of town transportation wise?
in the west. No.
Okay, Let's do that middle section again, 1900 east to, again, the Watts Peak area, the options puzzle piece. Anything in this area that you would like different?
Yes,
Southview South Bench Drive.
yes, I have something I'd like to show, take off. The road that runs from 1900 east west on top of the bluff, I think it's 70 something. I can't even read it, it's so small.
77, 75,
Nope, 7600,
7600 right here.
right? Yeah, where it stops right there, take that road off and just have that road at 7600 turn and just go to the south. Right through there, just leave that connection gone. Let's take that connection off. Yep, that's the one.
Do not connect at 7600 south.
Yes, and the reason why is that 7600 above the top of the hill where Erica Way is, that road is only a 50-foot road. And so it's very narrow road. It's not a good connection. The upper
mean-
connection is where it's going to be a better connection.
You think down
I-
at 77, 75 would be a better connection than right
Yep.
there?
Yep. Just because
Okay.
7600 and you pull out and when you get to 1900 east, you're looking down the hill and up 1900. I just think it's just better to take that out.
Is there an agreement on that?
What if a developer comes in and buys that lot and wants to put the road through? Do we wait and say, no, you can't because it's not on the plan? Or we say, show us what you got?
I
I
think
don't
it
think
ends
we've
as a
allowed for that to
cul-de-sac.
happen.
Okay.
You would always allow connectivity.
Yep, yep.
We're just saying the designation or requirement is being removed.
Okay.
So we've got that on there as a minor collector. Are we saying that we remove that designation on 7600?
Mhm.
I'd do that as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you would want to if you're not going to connect. But then you'd want to, I mean, wouldn't you want to move it to somewhere else?
Yeah.
Right.
To the south.
So all of that would be orange, that 77,
Correct. Yeah.
77, 75 south would become more of a
The collector.
collector.
But would you take
And-
it just to 1900 east then?
Yeah.
Yeah, dead ends
So
to
Rob, I
the east
apologize.
of there.
Rob, I apologize. I'm still trying to get caught up from when I lost connectivity here, but your reasoning behind not connecting 7600 south would be what again?
7600 south on the top of the hill is only a 50-foot road. And it also connects to the top of 1900 east. So it's a blind corner and curve or just a blind corner down the hill and up the hill. So it just would make better sense to move all that collector over onto 77, 75 south.
I might be the dissenting vote on that one. I just think the more connections, the better. It diffuses traffic across the entire area. I get what you're saying about the top of 1900 and 7600. That is an issue. I hate to lose momentum on if it is ever to develop that we lose the opportunity to have the developer put in the connections. And that's all this is. It's not an approval to get the road, just to consider the road.
If I understand correctly, and this was before my time, I thought that that lot did develop and the road was not put in at the time.
No, well, that lot has been developed for a long, long time. At least partly developed. I don't know if you consider the whole thing developed, but there is a house right there. That's the Stark residence. And in fact, there might be two homes, but it's been on the plan for a long, long time. I think if you look, one of the reasons I believe it was put on the plan was for kind of not an emergency ingress egress, but an emergency access for fire an ambulance to get across town if for some reason South Weaver Drive is not available to them. If you look, it ties neatly into View Drive, and then they can get across town fairly easily. If you put it on 77, 75, it kind of dumps them in an odd place.
Well, the way I see it, Barry, is they dumps them in the middle, right where they can be instead of on top.
Yeah, but it doesn't go through to the east
Sure,
Like-
it does.
like View Drive does. I mean, yeah,
View
you
Drive-
can jog around through there and get through there eventually, but it's a lot of jogging to get clear over to 89 or clear over to that direction versus
There's-
going on View
There's
Drive.
there's the same jog.
Yeah, I mean, you would hit 1900 east and then you just go to the north.
Go to the
along
north, that's true.
And follow that main road, which is a good road for emergency and get you right to the frontage if that's the concern. It's probably
I just know that
better,
we're,
to be honest, it's probably better than winding along View because View doesn't get you anywhere either.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're
Barry, I
highlighting
might,
the residential road configuration is not made for quick access, through the residential neighborhoods. It is a little bit of a hodgepodge of
Yeah.
non-connectivity, if that makes sense. So I think the goal is one of those definitely needs to happen
Yeah.
so that there's east-west connectivity beyond South Weaver Drive. But which one I think is probably debatable of which one is better. I think the idea of having them both on the plan was that eventually we'd like at least one. Both would be great, but I don't know if we have the ability to connect 7600 South at this point without working with that property owner directly. I don't know if it's a development conversation. I do wonder if it's a development conversation on the 7775. I believe that there still is that opportunity if that property developed and subdivided in any way that would be a development moment when that happens. So maybe that is the one that you leave on the map if we're just picking one.
Well, and the other,
David Kirk,
sorry, the other reason is that top of that hill road is just so narrow. I just like the flow of that upper 77, 75. It just flows better.
So Rob, would you propose then to just kind of reverse those two? You put the dashed red line there through that piece, yeah, right there. And then put the orange line down, right down there.
I'd put the orange line just like Dave's showing there.
Like Dave's showing it, yeah.
And then I wouldn't put the red line there at all. I'd just leave it off.
You'd
So
leave it off.
7600 is just left white. There's nothing there. There's no connection. And the orange line comes on 7775, dashes through this spot, and then remains orange throughout.
Yes.
Linda Stark's gonna just love you, Rob.
Yeah, I think, Rob, that we take the emphasis off of 7600 South, but yet, should the Stark property ever develop in some form, that we'd like that to connect through there if possible, but maybe not have the emphasis of development on there.
I could go for that.
I agree. I hate to lose another east-west connection. We're just so starved for those.
I'm just
I'd rather
saying,
see something.
Linda Stark, that's never going to happen.
Right, I
Just never.
agree. It's, well,
So let's develop and let's plan for what we think might be a better chance.
sure.
Is all I'm
sure.
saying.
Yeah, and that's why I brought up the way I did, is maybe we
Mhm.
emphasize the opposite, just what Barry was saying though.
Okay.
Sure. So
I wanna-
make it. Sorry, go ahead, Barry.
I just want to point out one thing. That current red dash line that's right below the hand there that Dave's cursor is on right there. That little piece of road that your hand is almost next to that shows an existing road, that's not an existing road. It doesn't have, it's not there. It's a driveway.
Do we need
That's-
to fix that?
Yeah, we need to fix that. So that should be that'll be a dashed orange
The whole
line
way.
all the
Right.
way.
Okay,
Okay. And that also makes better sense for that development. That piece of it ever develops too, I think.
Yeah.
Same situation if it ever develops, both those roads.
Yeah.
okay. Great. I think we came to a point with that. Everybody agrees with the orange all the way to here, dashed through this property, orange connecting on 7775 to 1900 East, and then removing the coloring from 7600 South, but leaving it a red dash right through the Stark property.
Yep.
So
Okay.
Dave, can I ask you a question? Do you see me? Is my video working?
I just see the phone number. I don't see you.
Okay. See, somehow I've lost that video connection, so I can't see your screen. So just as we move forward, just help me. I've got the maps in front of me. I just need a little bit more time figuring out what you guys are looking at.
Okay.
I apologize.
Try to
Tell
verbalize
those
it a
kids
little
to
bit
turn
better.
off Disney Plus.
They're not even here, so I don't know what's going on. I'm blaming Apple.
Okay, well, anything else
Thank you.
from 1900 East to the west?
But can I go back to Barry? When you say it's a driveway, is there a house there?
There is a house up there.
There's a house and
Okay.
a barn.
See how
They-
it's got like a,
You see that property line right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a lot, and I don't recall all the details about how they got approval to build up there, but they did without building a road in there at all. It's just a driveway.
Okay. Thank you.
I think on to the next one.
Okay,
Is the one I read about is the View Drive in 7800.
yes, so the next spot that received quite a bit of attention, and you saw there was even a petition that was signed by, I believe, 25 residents, 13 different homes, was to remove the connection from 7800 South near 2700 East, to remove that connection right here. This is a road that currently dead ends and does not connect to View Drive. The plan draft currently shows it connecting to View Drive. The request from the local residents there was to remove that connection. Leave 7800 as a dead end.
I guess I don't know if this is a question for Dave or Barry, but isn't there a portion that we show as dash line that really should be an established street?
I think it's-
I'm wondering. Oh, go ahead.
Well, Taylor, I think it is an established street, but it's really undersized. It's not,
I
not,
think 6650.
yeah, it's exactly the same situation we have on 6650. So I think that's the reason it's dashed in there, because there would need to be considerable improvements made to that road, almost a total rebuild of the road, should we decide
But
to make that connection.
6650 will,
Hello?
No,
Hello?
Everybody here? I see people moving. So
Yeah,
I
guess-
think we lost him.
Oh,
He was speaking and then we lost him.
sorry, I lost my connection there for a second. I was saying 6650 is, the plan is to reopen it,
Yes.
even without any improvements to it. But the emphasis of it being a collector is being removed by the future Old Maple going through to South Weaver Drive, and 6650 would tee in. So,
So
yeah, I think 7800 South is very similar in some respects. If we can create an alternate, or actually maybe we just need to decide, do we actually need an alternate? Does it need to go through?
I don't think there
So-
is an opportunity for an alternate. It either goes through, or we just utilize those existing roads that are shown there, Peachwood Way and 2530, and that becomes the route as it is now.
Mhm. Right.
So Barry, do we have a standard width for a collector written in anywhere in our code?
Yeah, we do. And I believe that's in I think that's designated in the chapter 11 or title 11, the standards section.
See, I think I've been told two different things then, because I've heard that we don't.
I may not, and
We have different roadway widths in our
Yeah.
standard. But the designation of collector, it's not this black and white kind of a thing. We've identified this as a collector simply by the nature of the use, not necessarily the width of the road and the amount of traffic. So I know that UDOT tends to have a little bit more specific categorization of the amount of traffic, the width of the road creates it as a collector. That's probably something that Brandon would need to explain a little bit more. But we do have various widths, cross sections in our city standards as far as if we were building a 60-foot right of way or a 78-foot or whatnot, and those numbers may be off a little bit, but we do have those standards in place when that width of road is built. But having it be orange here doesn't require a certain width if it were to develop, if that makes sense.
there is, Taylor, in section 11-4-4B, it does outline what a major street is, 110 feet, a collector streets of 78 feet, and local streets of 70 feet.
Except for East Canyon Drive.
At least initially, to a conversation that we had about I forget the name of the development, but we were going to reduce the width of the road to allow some berming on the sides, some natural stormwater attenuation there. And I guess where I'm going with this is I'm not sure if I'm really tied to a needed width of a collector, that I'm okay with a road ebbing and flowing in its width, as long as it achieves its desired purpose or need. And I guess I would hate to see another east-west connection lost. And I don't necessarily feel like a connection through that portion of 7800 needs to be a collector width. I want to honor the wishes of the people in the area and maintain a certain width. And I'm not opposed to having that width maintained. I hate to lose east-west connections.
So Taylor, are you saying you would like to see it, the designation as a collector taken off, but leave it as a local road connection?
Yeah. That in the event that we can make the connection, I think it would be a good thing, but I don't think we force the developer or any landowners to say that we need to change the widths.
Okay.
And that just the nature of the width of the road kind of directs what kind of traffic pattern you're going to have on it, if that makes sense.
You got other opinions on that?
My opinion is, I'm sorry, opposite Taylor. I think we go ahead, honor the wishes of the folks that live there, and let's not make the connection from View Drive to 7800. Peachwood Way down to 23 or 2530 across works just fine.
Yep.
Already. And so quite frankly, we don't need it.
So Rob, I agree with that. Oh, sorry, Taylor, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I'm going to be the dissenting view on that, because I think we absolutely need every east-west connection that we can. So that's fine. This is a give and take. We're not always going to agree. I get that.
So I do see the value of an additional east-west access there. But I also appreciate the way the residents rallied and got together and put together a petition and signed it. I'm very civil and appropriate way to express our displeasure, and I think we should honor that.
So I'd back up the orange, sorry, Gary, I'd back up the orange to Peachwood Drive from View Drive and turn from, yep, that's exactly it. And just from there down, just get rid of the orange and the connection.
Would you leave any kind of a dash then, or you're just saying no reason to connect at all?
There's no reason to connect at all. And the reason, and here's where I'm sitting. It really is already all built out. And so there's not an emergency connection that needs to happen there or anything like that. It's just, there's just nothing that would require another connection.
Sure.
The other ones are just so close already.
Right.
So you're saying the travel time from View Drive and 2350 East is not going to be significantly different by driving south to Peachwood Way and coming around, or even coming all the way to Deer Run, than to connect at 7800. It would be different, but not so much different that it requires a connection.
That's correct.
Okay, well, we can make that change. We can remove the connection and the orange coloring there, so it's just white.
Did Wes have any thoughts?
I think, what the citizens want, we ought to be listening to what they want there. Pretty much the same as 6650 from 475 westward. The people over there do not want that road widened or anything over in that area. It's the same situation here.
Well, but 6650 will reconnect without even doing any widening.
It will, and it's going to be a hazard, but if we do any improvements on that road over there, it'll be a taking against the people that
We're not going to do any improvements. We're not going to widen it, but we've reconfigured the orientation such that it's not advantageous at all unless you live on that road.
Right, yeah.
Use it. So
That'll make the soccer people happy.
See how Old Maple Road turns there, Wes,
Yep.
in the picture? So once that connection happens, then that's when the agreement for the berm at 6650 is to be removed.
Right.
Yeah. But that's my only thought.
Is that the way it was, Tim?
I'm not opposed to what you're talking about, Rob and Gary, but I haven't really looked the way we looked at 6650 and came up with an alternate and to try and lessen the traffic and still have connectivity. Because I do like connectivity, but yeah, once you connect 7800 South, I think you're going to invite a lot of traffic. Mm-hmm. So what my only thought is, without looking at it a whole lot, I agree with what you're saying.
Can I ask you how the traffic pattern changes once we establish that connection? We'll still have the same traffic count.
I think you'll increase the traffic on 7800 South immensely. Everyone that's using.
Again, it's just a matter of where you're going, and we haven't changed anything about where people are going. It is the same traffic pattern. And so if somebody is going to come up, I don't know, even if they're going, I'm just looking at the map now and I'm hypothesizing, so bear with me.
Sure.
But I think most of your traffic is going to be split. And in that scenario, I think people coming up 2600 and coming onto Peachwood, that would cut traffic on Peachwood as well.
Yes, it would.
So it would diffuse the demand.
But it's going to 7800 South is not getting hardly any traffic, and it would
totally get that.
An enormous amount of traffic because any increase is going to be huge impact to 7800 South. So I'm just trying to think, could there still be connectivity but not draw that much traffic? Because I think when I've been up in that area and I've been around the View Drive, if 7800 South went through, I would take it. But I'm forced to go around to Peachwood Way and, wind through there, or go up to,
further north to Deer Run
Right.
and go out. Where View Drive, if it went through, I'd take it in a heartbeat. And
But it's a
so,
So I think that's why,
Is the city gonna buy that lot to put the road through, or if somebody comes in and puts his house on that lot where the 2 is and 2450, top of the 2, that's gonna block any connection through there in the future.
oh, definitely. But
Well,
there's a,
let's
there's
take
a
it out.
problem with that connectivity. I was just trying to see if there was a way to still have connectivity, but not impact 7800 South. And so my immediate answer is no. I agree with Rob and Gary. I don't see a way to not have a heavy impact on 7800 South should they connect, should they happen to connect, but not that connection would ever actually occur.
Right.
Right.
and that's just it. This is a line on a map today. This is not a decision to build the road tomorrow.
Right.
This is just, if everything aligned, this is what we had planned for. And
Mhm.
so, I think 7800 South, we maintain the width, we maintain the narrow street. That will discourage people from utilizing it. But it allows us to have some connectivity.
Okay.
So that's all my thoughts, and I've expressed them. So I'm good. You guys want to
Okay.
move forward? I'm good.
Good, Dave?
Yep, I heard that we are removing the connection.
Yep.
Okay, any other, we've kind of worked east to west a little bit here. Was
That
there
road
anything-
going over to
Sorry,
Uinta there,
West, what was that?
the road that goes over to Uinta
Okay,
by the river and the intersection there. I don't see any value in that.
okay,
I do.
I do as
Yes.
well.
I'd like to keep it.
Yeah, I'd like to see that stay.
I don't think you'd see it today or anytime in the future. It's land that's owned by natural resources, and I don't think they're going to give it up. Also, the Northern Utah Trails Foundation has a bunch of that land in there.
I'd still like to keep it.
Well, I'll just withhold their taxes then.
Hey, that's fine.
Oh,
They don't pay taxes on it anyway.
okay, all right.
Tax exempt organization.
Oh, shoot. Now, I think there's value of at least showing it there. What I'm hoping for is with showing that there, that when they do the interchange, UDOT recognizes that. And I think Uinta is also looking at that same connection. And that when they do the interchange, they also do that for us.
Yeah.
Well, another issue associated with that is currently the city is in discussions with Uinta and Weber and Davis County to change the county line and the city limits to the freeway and not the river. So that goes outside of what our potential city limits will be.
Yeah, that's very true, Wes. But I mean, UN has agreed that this is what that would look like anyway. So no matter where that line starts to change to.
I've heard 2 people say leave it, 1 person say remove it.
I'm good either way.
And Gary's not helping.
I'd like to keep it.
There, you got 3.
That's
Okay.
right.
All right, move on.
Anything else on this east end of town that you look at and would like to see differently on the general plan map?
I think it's good.
Okay, let me get back through let me go to the next map. That map is, whoa, sorry about that. Somebody at the controls here using a small mouse pad. Okay, that means the next map to look at is our active transportation and parks map. We'll start on the West side of town again, work with our same areas. We will work from the puzzle piece to the left.
Is this trails?
Yep.
Yes, this is
Trails and parks.
active transportation, parks.
Okay.
And it also includes bikeways. So it could be bike lanes on roads.
Okay.
And future sidewalks, right, Barry?
Future,
Yes, there's,
Yeah.
if you look at the legend, it shows the different things. There's existing bike lanes, future
yeah.
bike lanes, areas of share the road, then existing and future trails, sidewalks, other.
Okay. So I have a comment on that Peterson Trailhead. Will someone please change that back to SON?
Change it back to what?
I don't even know where I'm at when it says SEN. He's not even on the call to appreciate it, old Jones and Associates.
We'll let him know.
Okay, let's go to the center. I don't think there's any comment there.
Okay. From there, east to 1900 east.
I'm not seeing, I have a comment. Didn't we get some comments about some missing sidewalk on 1900 East?
Yeah.
Where there's a,
Yeah, just on top of the hill.
yeah,
Mhm. Where the school bus stop is, I believe.
Yeah. Right up there.
yeah, and we're not showing anything to do with sidewalks there. Maybe we ought to include that.
Show sidewalks on 1900 east.
Well, show the missing section of sidewalk.
Barry, is that a dash line or a solid line on the purple going at 1900?
That's a dash line, and that's a bike lane, I believe. Yeah, that's a future bike lane. So it's not addressing the sidewalk issue at all.
But I think it is. I think there's a purple line next to the blue line.
Is there?
And I can't tell if it's, yeah, there is. I can't tell if it's
Yeah.
dashed or if it's solid.
Oh, maybe I'm missing that, but it's, I'm not seeing
Yeah,
a solid
I mean,
line.
Well, it's not on Dave's.
No, it's not on this
no,
one.
but I'm looking at the one that's published on the website.
Right.
Yeah, it's on the one that's in the packet.
Exactly.
Okay,
So we just need to fix Dave's.
yeah.
It's just Dave's got the problem.
Yeah, apparently I'm the problem. That's not the first time I've said that phrase.
Get used to it.
You're right. The paper version I've been writing notes on shows that purple line next to it.
So the question
Okay.
was,
Is
is
it
that
solid or
purple line?
dashed?
Sorry. The
Okay.
question was, is a purple line solid or dashed? And it would be solid where sidewalk is installed and dashed where we're missing sidewalk. So.
Okay. So I'm good with that. If I missed an opportunity to talk about, we're talking about that most westerly puzzle piece, whatever option we go with there, can we include future sidewalks along those residential collectors too?
Well, that's part of the standard. I guess we could put it in there, but it's part of the standard of a collector road. It includes sidewalks.
Okay. No, I just want to remain consistent across what we're doing with the other sidewalks. Since we're not proposing any in the area, it wouldn't be that much to add a purple dash line that runs parallel to those residential roads.
That wouldn't be hard.
I think we're just saying this is part of the trail system though. Or is that road part of the trail system?
I see it as a kind of a connection. So if you didn't want to continue on the trail of Old
there
Fort
it is.
Road,
Which I'm fine with if that's what you're saying.
yeah. I mean, it just seems like we ought to at least put something on the plan that connects back to South Weaver Drive.
Uh-huh, right. Especially that particular road that we're talking about is the road we want to connect to South Weaver Drive and everybody to use. So that makes sense.
So
To the same effect, there's another dashed purple line along kind of at the intersection of Peterson Parkway. It just kind of is hanging out there. It doesn't really connect to anything. It's not doing anything.
That's to connect over to the, that's just a sidewalk and connector to the dog park and Posse grounds.
So there's a sidewalk
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we take that
So
off
two
or
parts.
make it a solid. Make it
Yeah.
a solid purple
Oh.
line.
Mhm.
Right, because this was drafted mid-project as the Riverside and the Harvest Park were being developed. And so, yeah, this here from Peterson Parkway
Yeah.
connecting Canyon Meadows to Posse Grounds, that has been installed, I believe, or will be by the time we get through this. So,
It's there. I walked on it this morning.
yeah, putting that
Yeah.
as a solid line. Yeah, we'll do that. That's a great point.
Good catch.
But that's the easy stuff. A lot of comment on the canal trail. I mean, that kind of goes through this part of town too. I guess at this point, the canal trail is not that big of a deal, except for that it's open, right?
I'm not following what we're talking about on the canal trail. What was that now?
So I'm just saying that if we're taking everything west of 1900, are we okay with the canal trail as proposed in this area, or do we want to address it as we get further east? But there's a lot of public comment on the canal trail.
Might as well hit it now.
Yeah, let's take the canal trail as a whole package.
Okay. So, I mean, my take is if we have a trail that goes up on the hillside away from the canal, then the canal trail itself is unneeded here. And we listen to public comment and we take it off.
I strongly disagree that the canal trail is not needed. Because so you're just inconveniencing one set of residences for another if it's even an inconvenience. I'm not sure it is. That trail would be pretty wide because it's not only the canal, it'd be the road too. So the width of a dirt road. So
And I'm just trying to get in front. Go ahead.
I think the other thing about the canal trail, yesterday I went for a bike ride down in Ogden on the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. And they've got a section of that that's down on a fairly flat level. It's an old road, I'm sure. And that's where you find the elderly people. And then they have an alternate Bonneville Shoreline Trail that's up higher on the mountain that's got a lot of up and down, and that's where you find the young people running and riding bikes. I think there's a need for maybe both. By the way, I was one of the younger people up there on the high one.
yeah, we want to make sure that's clarified.
Yeah. I have used both.
Are we, Taylor? I mean, is that where are we at? What do you think?
So I've just been looking at the survey results.
While you're looking that up, can I bring up something else?
Yeah, certainly.
I'm not sure where to do it, but I think there needs to be some kind of trail between the frontage road on the east side of Highway 89 up to the Bonneville Trail, not clear down to the Weber Canyon Trailhead, somewhere, so people don't have to trespass. But is there any way to do that? I don't know that lay of that land well enough to even make a
Are
suggestion.
you talking?
There's a,
Are you talking through Job Corps?
it can physically be done, but there's not without crossing private properties that people don't want you on.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm looking for. Is there an easement or something that can be obtained to get to the bond, just so people don't have to trespass?
Well, the city has the easement up to their water tank, but it's
Where's
just
that at?
for this. Let's see. You go up. Well, it's pretty close to where the cursor is, where the hand is. It's up. It comes off of, yeah, right there, and goes up to the city's water tank up there. And there, the city has an easement on that, but I don't think it's, you know, a blanket use easement. It's just for the city's use, access to their water tank.
Can we
Yeah.
find out? I mean, I know a lot of people drive over there, and the Smiths are very gracious. They really are. You know, all of Angie's husband's family, and very gracious. But I would rather have a place that says, okay, this is where public can go without trespassing or bothering them. And I know this is a whole discussion with them. I get it, and I'm very sensitive to that. But I don't know.
That's if you, Dave, can you slide that map down so you can see just a little higher? No, I'm sorry, it's the other direction. Go the other way. There. That Weaver Canyon Trailhead is that point. That was the intent. That's
Okay.
a trailhead to get you both onto the Bonneville shoreline as well as the river trail.
And I've never been on that Bonneville Trail from the Weaver Canyon Trailhead. Is that a trail that's approved? Is it improved?
No, it's not there.
improved.
That's why it's a dash line. It doesn't exist now, but the NEPA work was just recently approved by the federal government. And that was part of that NEPA work was an alignment that gets you down essentially what you're seeing there on the map.
Okay.
So it has been
So
studied.
Barry,
and,
what was that NEPA? What was the NEPA action?
I'm trying to remember what all the designations are, but anyway, I just know that they submitted this alignment and that was approved.
Okay.
And then do we dash at the south end also where Bonneville shoreline gets into Layton? Does that get us, do we have a connection
Well,
there to South Weber?
Yeah, it gets, actually, that shouldn't be dashed. That should be from right where his cursor is, southward, should be a solid line because it's in existence.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
section is.
That
already
section
in
is
existence.
actually there. It's right where it
Below?
gets,
City boundaries, but we still show that connection to where Bonneville shoreline ends. So we can show that as existing.
yeah.
Okay. But then across the highway, is it just the overpass there at Highway 193
No.
to get us over to across Highway 89 to South Weber?
There's going to be an underpass under Highway 89.
Where the hand is, somewhere in that area or something?
No,
I think it's farther south.
it's, well, now you're talking about,
Just to
on the
connect.
Layton side, Tim?
Well, I'm just wondering about connecting Bonneville shoreline to South Weber City at the south end,
Oh, no, there is no connection there.
because we have this red dash
well-
up the Highway 89 on the west side of Highway 89. We've got a red dash line.
Yeah.
That's
That's
legally.
proposed by the UDOT.
So that's my question is, does it
Well-
continue and then at some point?
I think that was
connect?
proposed by Taylor, and I don't know what it connects to. Taylor, can you enlighten us?
I'm not sure if we really fully understand that. I think it would have to be studied. So I think there's some frontage there that along Highway 89 that you can certainly get back up to, but I don't think our map goes far enough south to address just exactly where to.
Now,
Uh-huh.
Layton City is planning on a connection from their Cays Creek Trail on up to the Bonneville shoreline.
Yeah,
And maybe that's where it would be in Layton.
right.
I mean,
Okay.
it
I mean, that's
definitely
quite a
makes
bit.
sense to have it connect to the botanical gardens up there. That'd be kind of a cool ride.
Yeah.
I know as part of the US 89 project, they're also looking at how bike lanes and trails work along the frontage on that west side, or sorry, the east side. And as you get just north of 193, SR 193 on the east side, there is connection proposed as part of that project that would get bike lanes and things to that point, which means that you could take the road that goes to the east off of 193 or near 193 that gets you up to the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. So there is connection from what we're showing as the east frontage road and a trail that could potentially go along there to the
Mhm.
Bonneville Shoreline Trail. They are close enough there near 193 that you could
Oh,
hop from one to the other.
yeah,
Okay.
that's true. I've forgotten about that. UDOT tying in that a bike lane along there. So yeah, that would be a connection.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that's just outside our map here a little bit, but or right nearby it.
Right.
But that's an
So-
access to Bonneville Shoreline Trail, but the main access point for the city would be at that Weber Canyon trailhead at the end of Cornea Drive.
Okay.
We kind of keep popping here. But I'm kind of wondering, does it make sense to, because I think a lot of the questions that came from the general survey or the survey were what kind of trail is being proposed in these different locations. And at least for the one that I like to see on the south side of the canal, I don't think I'd like to see anything paved. It would just be single track, like a hiking trail. And then, as we're talking about that connection to maybe the Bonneville Shoreline Trail or the Cays Creek Trail in Layton, I think it would be important to, at least from a general plan, designate that, hey, if a trail were to go in, we'd like to see it, at least my proposal would be to see it as a single track, hiking trail to a point. I don't know if we wanted to get into those conversations, but I know that was hitting on a lot of the concerns that I saw in the comments.
Okay.
So
So in the narrative, we simply identify the location of that,
Yeah.
well, a general location of that South Hillside Trail. We could add a description that we anticipate that being a natural trail, right? An unpaved trail.
Right.
Okay.
And I think it would be important note to also say that, these trails, in general, they don't go in unless we have concurrence from homeowners. I don't know if that's something that we want to bring up in the general plan, but I know it was a concern throughout the comments. Like, the city's not going to use eminent domain to come in and utilize or to get a trail access. We're going to be partners and ensure that people are compensated accordingly, right?
Right. Yeah, you're exactly right. Not once has the city had a conversation about eminent domain for trails. There's always a discussion with property owners and obtaining access easement or the property itself in some way, not through eminent domain.
So, and again, I don't know if it's a place to even bring it up in the general plan. It's a comment that I wanted to address at least publicly because it was brought up. So, I'm not sold on even mentioning that nothing is going to be taken. We're going to work with property owners, and if it doesn't go, it doesn't go.
Right, that's taking the general plan from the concept down into what are the actual tools of and process in order to obtain property for trails. I think there are a lot of times a question that I've heard is when you see a dashed line on a map that, well, you're just going to come and put that trail in regardless of property owners' wishes. And I know that that's not the case, that there's always conversations with property owners and how that works. So you're right, Taylor. There are questions surrounding that, and the map itself doesn't necessarily address it.
No.
When I was at state parks and we were looking at acquisitions or right of ways and stuff like that, we never used the E word. I mean, that was,
No, and I even,
you do not, even state government will not use that unless it's absolutely necessary and with the agreement of the property owner.
Well, it says right on the map. Made
Yeah,
safe,
specific to the canal trail.
agreements have been made with the property owner. I mean, that's,
That
There's-
property owner, that property owner referred there is the canal company, not the
yes.
adjacent property owners. That refers to the canal company.
I mean, there's so many things that have to be considered before any trail can even go in, just privacy and liabilities and to have to be considered by a city.
I'm not sure why we're connecting any trails to Layton, because it was told that we don't want any connection to Layton.
we don't want a road connection to Layton.
That's not what I read. I read no connection to Layton.
I would like a bike path. I could use a
I
bike
know,
path.
I'd love to be able to ride my bike to work without going on 89
Exactly. Totally
or
agree.
193.
Yeah.
You all bring up a really important piece of this discussion that probably should be stated, that especially as it relates to trails, the general plan is identifying future trails, but it's not giving the specifics of when and where, or not, it's not giving the specifics of when and how. It's just simply saying this would be a great place for a trail eventually. But it's not the specifics of we'd like to obtain property right now. It doesn't prioritize them and say this trail is the most important and we're going to work on it right away. It doesn't do that necessarily. It just identifies the general concept of and locations of trails. And so once you get into the actual details of planning and building trails, there's a lot of hurdles and there's a lot of discussions and a lot of details before a trail ever gets put in.
Could we have a bike path or walking path that goes up the, I don't even know if I want to say it, that goes up the road to the water tank?
Tim, why not talk about it?
I would love to have a bike path that goes up there. To me, that just would thrill me to death.
It's gated and locked.
Oh, I didn't say it was going in, Wes. None of these trails are in. I'm just saying a dash line for a bike path.
Access.
Yeah, just
you put a
trails.
pedestrian access that allows a bike at the maximum width.
Are you saying you want that to connect to a Layton City road?
Oh, it wouldn't bother me at all.
No.
I would love it to be able to bike, to have an alternate somewhere other than riding my bike up Highway 89.
Yeah.
So explain to me,
Can I ask a specific question?
maybe you're going to ask my same question.
How do you want the map to be different?
Yeah.
No changes.
A red dash line up to somewhere.
Up to somewhere.
Maybe that's a discussion later that we could have about trails or something. So.
I think the Parks and Trails Committee is looking at all of this and will make some recommendations in the future.
Okay, I'm open to that in the future.
So you say leave the map as is, other than a couple of the things that we've discussed here.
Yes, yeah. I don't want to just throw my sudden, conversation onto the general plan without more consideration than, 30 seconds.
So.
Okay.
Okay, is that all we have on trails then?
So
If-
we really never addressed the issues that were brought up on the survey for the canal trail. And there are some comments on the map that say canal trail to be developed only where the canal is enclosed or otherwise made safe. So I don't know, are we ready to say we're in agreement that the canal trail is maintained from Highway 89 through, I don't know, where it's open? Because just reviewing the public comments, a lot of them had to do with privacy of backyards and the fact that that canal is open.
Well, the canal won't be open if we do a trail. I 100% sure that they're not gonna go for that.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the canal has to be safe before any trail
Yeah.
would go next to it. And privacy concerns have to be considered before any trail would go there. So if you want to mention, safety, liability, privacy, should all be considered in any improved trail. But I don't know that we're doing that on the general plan. The general plan is just showing locations.
Has anybody ever taken the Denver Rio Grande Rail Trail down through any part of Davis County?
Awesome.
Yeah,
It is awesome, but you
on the west
realize
side. Yes.
that goes past a whole lot of backyards,
Yes.
a whole lot of backyards. And it's
Yes.
not,
It's also offset quite a ways from the backyards too.
yeah.
No.
You're talking about the Legacy Trail?
No, I'm talking about the Denver and Rio Grande Rail Trail. A lot of backyards and a lot of them are pretty close and
Very close.
they're fenced they're mostly fenced with chain link, but there's no privacy issues there that I've seen.
And there's other trails that are all across like Salt Lake County that are right next to open canals and waterways, and it's done all the time. So the safety concern is not so much an issue for me. I just, again, I guess my question ultimately is, how do we envision this trail operating? Is it going to be dirt? Are we talking about a paved trailway? I think those questions would be interesting ones to at least address in the narrative.
As far as the canal trail, I think that'd be up to the canal company to decide what they would like to see on the surface. They may say, no, they're not going to allow us to pave it due to maintenance issues.
Guys, I think
So
we're
we
getting
just-
way off topic.
I agree.
Is the canal map okay? Or actually not, is the trail map okay? Is there any additional trails or are we missing spots for trailheads? That's what I want to entertain right now. If not, I'd like to move on because it's 8:40 and we said we'd only do it for 2.5 hours. Do we want to keep going or do we want to do it tomorrow night?
Keep going.
Keep going.
going.
So
I'm
if-
guiding, I'm guiding tomorrow, so I may not be here.
all right.
I
so
wouldn't
let's-
be here
let's move
tomorrow
on.
night either.
Okay, so let's move on. Annexation map.
Annexation map. Let's start on the west again and talk through it.
It looks good to me. We've had a lot of discussion on it and I'm pretty comfortable with it. That's just
I
my
agree.
thoughts.
Well,
Agreed.
I have a question. Because of this effort to change the county boundary and the city boundary between Uinta and South Weaver along the north side of the freeway, do we want to take off any of those properties that are shown north of the freeway?
If those changes happen, yes.
If the changes happen.
For sure, but.
Do you want to leave them on there for now?
I would, just because you never know.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And then if the change does happen, then in the next revision, we won't have those.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Center of city. East of city. Okay, looks good. Next
The
map.
annexation of Job Corps, can we do that?
Sure, why can't you?
You
Absolutely.
can't,
Okay.
it's up to property owners. It's not up to us.
I could
We
see
could
a
annex the base
potential.
if we really wanted to.
You imagine the South Weaver runway?
Well, you know, there was a real danger just recently. We heard that Job Corps was going away, and it didn't happen. But if it ever does, that could become private property.
Yeah, so good reason to keep it on the map.
Yep. Okay, if there are any other comments, next map. Sensitive lands. Oh, what happened to the map? There it is.
Whoops, too far. Anything on the west side of town?
Middle. East side. Okay, nothing. Next map, please.
That was the last
Okay.
map.
That's it.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh,
That was the last
Guessing we
map.
have to do it.
man. Okay.
So we said this at the beginning, but just to reiterate, as staff, we'll take these proposed changes. I've written down notes. I'm sure Barry's written down notes. We'll make sure that we compare and get everything on the maps the right way. We've also written down sections where we need to update the narrative in order to have that match the map conversation. And then we will bring that forward as an agenda item on the August Planning Commission meeting for the official action of the Planning Commission to make a recommendation to the City Council for a general plan update. And at that point, of course, you'll have the chance to review all the material, make sure that it says what you want, and that you're in a position where a majority of the Planning Commission feels like the general plan is in a position to recommend.
Okay, very good.
Good.
I'll just ask generally, anybody got any additional comments?
I just thought of one thing having to do with the annexation policy. So the written portion, it was pointed out to me in our open house that we changed a section of that, like the first paragraph or so, and it created some inconsistencies or some contradictory statements that come later. So I'm going to have to go through that and see if I can't clean that up so there aren't any contradictions in there.
Okay.
I just have one thing. I think we kind of missed, and my fault, sorry, projected land use map and the open space on top of the hill. We didn't discuss that at all as a group. How we feel about that?
Keep it.
Okay, so the danger is you lose control of what happens up there. That's the danger. I personally would rather see us do something with it, at least to acknowledge something's there, or we just lose control. Then they
Which
build
parcel are
some
you
kind of
talking
tower.
about, Rob?
What's on top of the bluff, in the center of the city?
So okay, so it's like the dark blue and the more.
No, go to the gray
No.
on the first map.
So on the projected
Okay.
land use map number 1, the whole,
Oh,
the
sorry.
south
I was looking at annexation.
Yeah.
is gray.
I think I kind of think we need to divide that up. The stuff to the east of the water tank probably stay gray because it's simply it's dumb,
Undevelopable.
right? But there's a few parcels up on top that are developable, and I think you control a little bit better if we have a use there.
Has anybody driven up there?
I've been up there many times.
Beautiful
Um,
view.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's kind of an intermediate bench up there, and it is developable, provided you get services up there. But
I was
we
gonna
had
say,
a
how do
pretty
we get our
lengthy,
fire trucks there?
Yeah, we had a lengthy discussion with the council about that property and
there's-
about whether
Okay,
or not we
yeah,
could get
sorry, Barry.
services up there, particularly sewer and water. And I think the determination at that point was, at least I got the strong opinion from the council that they didn't want to provide any services up there, and therefore there would be no development up there.
Okay.
And keep it as open space.
I think
Yeah.
that there's also an idea that by designating as open space, if we don't plan for infrastructure necessarily, as was said, but if a developer came and said, we would like to do something, that we would have the ability as a city to say, well, if you want to do something and it does make sense, then you will have to pay for the cost of getting infrastructure to it, because we're not providing that infrastructure. And so
Right.
the idea of control is an interesting one. In some ways, we're saying we're planning for this to be open space. If you want to plan for it as a property owner for something else, then when you develop, or a developer who purchases the property would have to figure out how to get those services there at that point.
One thing I'd like to see on this open space is a delineation of steep slopes. How many of those properties are totally encompassed by steep slopes up there?
Yep.
Well, that's one of the things that's
It's
considered.
incorporated in the sensitive lands map.
Yeah.
That's sensitive lands map's pretty broad up in that area.
Sure.
Yeah, they take it all the way down to Layton as sensitive lands.
Right.
So-
But
Sorry.
yeah, that incorporates all types of different hazards that might potentially make it sensitive lands, and steep slopes is one of those.
My only concern is they develop commercial, Layton takes it, develops commercial property up there, they annex it, they take it. And next thing we know, we have 3 6-story towers looking over the city, and it just ruins the bluff line.
There's nothing we can do if they do that.
Well, that's
hold
what
on
I'm
though.
saying
Isn't,
now.
I thought Layton City couldn't provide services to that lower mid bluff area where the soil recycling company is now. Is that not a true statement?
Well, they couldn't easily provide them. That is, it's below their service area for sewer and storm drain in particular. It'd make it really hard to run the direction they would need it to run. But
So
you
you're
can't say
talking-
it's impossible. It's kind of a similar situation to what we have with the gravel pits. We can't make stuff run out of there by gravity either, but it's possible to develop it with pumps and other methods to make those things work. So to say Layton couldn't go into Layton and be developed I think would be erroneous.
So what about
I think we lost Taylor.
You cut
Yeah.
out.
to us and said, if we heard word of Layton City having a proposal in front of them to develop that parcel, would we be notified and be given an opportunity to provide public comment?
Yeah, but
We would be
listen to it.
notified. We would be notified if there was an annexation proposal for it, not necessarily if there was a development proposal.
And I might be getting planning regulations crossed between multiple states here, but isn't there like a buffer that kind of overlaps both municipalities around the boundary, where there are some consideration given to both municipalities that could be potentially impacted by development next to a bordering or on a border?
Not necessarily.
No, there's not in Utah. I know there are some states that do that.
Okay.
We can plan for
Yeah.
things that are outside our borders, but it doesn't necessarily give us any kind of real control over it. You have to annex it. Annexation is where that takes place in Utah.
So help me understand, Barry. If a developer comes and says, "Hey, South Weaver, I just bought this property up on top of the hill, and we can see that you want it for open lands, and we want you, South Weaver, to annex this," and we say, "Well, okay, yeah, you need to get the services there, and so on and so forth. But I'm sorry, we have open lands, and we won't move off open lands." So they go to Layton and they say, Layton, we'd like to develop up there. Will you annex that property? And they could say yes. And then they could put commercial, whatever they want up there. Is that possible?
Yep.
It's conceivable, yes.
So
Rob, I
would
would
it be
assume that
better
when a
for us?
developer comes to us,
Would it be better for us to go, okay, we've already designated up there as commercial. I'm just throwing a number, throwing something out there. If it's already commercial, then they don't have a reason to go to Layton, and then we can control the development agreement.
I think it's
my
important to note, I pulled up the annexation map so you could see it. The light blue is the only area that overlaps with what Layton has on their annexation policy,
Okay,
their annexation map. So Layton is not showing this bluff area that we're talking about as part of what they have in their annexation map. It's just this light blue area is the overlap area.
okay.
I think given if a
Is
developer
my
was to
concern
come-
legit or not?
I was just
Well,
gonna say, if a developer were to come, then we would have they would be proposing a rezone. If they felt like there's a higher and better use than open space. And then we could address the proposal. We would have public hearings and we'd hear them out. And then decide if that's something that we would consider amending our general plan for.
Yeah, I think if you're proposing anything other than open space now, my belief is it'll just get changed back when it gets to the council.
Well, I mean, yeah, I appreciate what you're saying.
But I
is that-
understand what
is
you're
that
saying, Rob.
proper planning. I appreciate, but I'm
Yeah.
just trying to look out for what's going on. If nobody else cares, I guess I don't either.
Well,
right?
I agree with you. I think it would be wiser for us to plan for something rather than nothing, open space. But that's, we had a pretty big discussion about that. And I think I thought it was settled then.
Yeah, I thought so too. And correct me if I'm wrong, once we put something out there, then we have to match our capital improvement plan to kind of match that projected use.
That's correct.
Right, that goes to that. This kind of ties together a bunch of different things. One, the transportation map, one, the projected land use map, and the annexation map. And all of those, of course, funnel into the capital facilities plans for our different infrastructure. But I think part of the conversation about it being open space was because of how it affects all those other things. If we're saying that we don't want a connection to Layton, then we're also saying we don't want to plan for infrastructure in a road that would get up to that area to provide service. If we're saying that we don't want to, that we want that to be open space, then we're not handcuffing ourselves, so to speak, with the capital facilities plans and providing infrastructure and things like that. They do all kind of tie together in that way. And I think that's why we ended up with the designation of open space, because that is the minimal plan in terms of us providing all of the services. And then it does mean that the property owner, if they decide to change their plan, which right now is they're not planning on developing, but if at some future point they do, then they'll have to come to the city and explain what the plan is and how they're going to make that happen, rather than us already put designation in place through a projected land use map. But either way, they're going to have to come forward and present the plan. Highest and best use conversation was already brought up, and the city will be able to respond at that point.
It would bring me to tears if there was a big office tower up there and that bluff was not the bluff it is today. But I just think there's smarter ways to protect that from happening than just leaving it to open land's chance. But I'm not gonna get in the way of changing it. The fight's not worth it to me.
We can do a bond to raise money for a conservation easement on the properties.
So
You-
Rob, I get
you-
what you're saying, but oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I get what you're saying, but I guess what's the risk? If it's not part of Layton City's annexation policy, then I think it's a diminished risk. And
Why do
there's just
you
no
say that,
services.
Taylor? Why do you say that? Because some landowner up there might go, look, Layton, you ought to put this on your annexation policy and change it to this zone. There's nothing that says that Layton can't change their annexation policy.
No, you're exactly right, which would mean that they would have to go through a general plan update to get that on their general plan.
Sure they would.
And
Yep,
then
yep.
we would have time to come in and at least have that conversation. But I guess what I'm saying is there's a diminished risk of what you're saying, that somebody comes in and builds, a 6-story office complex up on the bluff, given the
Okay.
fact that it's not in their annexation plan.
I hope I'm pushing up daisies by the time that happens, because sure enough, it will someday. And I
Right on.
just as soon keep track of that, but
Why don't we just pursue annexation sooner than later?
well, I think we have I kind of believe that's the landowner's deal to pursue annexation into what city they want to fall into.
That's true.
I think the best that we can do is just put it on the map.
Okay. Sorry to keep you an extra 20 minutes.
No, these are valuable conversations, and ultimately, we recognize the idea that the recommendation goes before the city council, and they can accept that recommendation. They can amend it if they want. But you as a planning body need to be able to speak to your own conscience and be able to provide a recommendation that you feel is a good and viable recommendation. So those conversations are valuable and are definitely worth it. We want to make sure that you have every ability and every chance to talk through what you feel is important. So I don't think you need to apologize for those types of conversations.
Appreciate that. If that's it from everybody, let's adjourn.
Can I bring up
Oh,
one?
sorry, Dave. Sorry.
Yeah, one more thing, simply that we have noticed a potential meeting tomorrow. It sounds like you've gotten to the point where that does not need to happen. And so we said that the decision would be made in this meeting, whether or not we'd hold that. So sounded like, based on the previous conversation, that we're not holding the meeting tomorrow. Is that true?
I would assume that's true.
I like it.
Okay. Okay. No meeting tomorrow for Planning Commission. And then we will, again, staff will put this information together and have it on the August agenda for you to make an official recommendation.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Move to adjourn.
Is there a
I'll second
I'll second.
All right.
I guess
Thanks,
we vote
guys.
too.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
You all.
Thanks.